Okay.
Good evening. I'm going to call to order the special board meeting of the Woodford County Board of Education via video teleconference. Let the record show that all members are present. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. The Pledge of Allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic under liberty, justice for all.
All right, the next item on the agenda is communications. I have one communication that I would like to read tonight. This is from the NAACP of Kentucky. This letter was sent to the Commissioner of Education, the Chairman of the Kentucky Board of Education, the Executive Director of the Kentucky School Boards Association, and to myself as Chairperson of the Woodford County School Board. Regarding the removal of School Board member Allison Richardson of Woodford County Schools. This letter is in response to the Change.org petition entitled Allison Richardson Must Resign from the Woodford County School Board that currently has 454 signatures and a written complaint to the Lexington chapter of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP. We seek to support their efforts in addressing the concerns regarding the unethical conduct of School Board member Allison Richardson. Ms. Richardson's recent behavior consisted of a recent and previous social media comment that indicated that she does not understand the effects of systematic racism and suggested difficulty in adequately representing all of her constituents of Woodford County School Board District 2. The Kentucky State Conference of the NAACP implores the educational leaders of Kentucky to consider the demands of many of the families that depend on Woodford County Public Schools to represent the needs of racially diverse children and families. Like many school districts across the state of Kentucky, Woodford County Schools must continue to address the racial disparities in achievement, teacher hiring, discipline, and minority contracting. It is our contention that Ms. Richardson's behavior has violated 1, Woodford County Public School core values of respect, which states, the Woodford County Public Schools will show consideration for all. We will seek to understand and accept our students' diverse needs while maintaining high expectations. Number 2, Kentucky School Board Association School Board Member Code of Ethical Conduct, which states that school board members shall adhere to the ethical standards of accord other members, parents, and the community with respect. The Kentucky State Conference of the NAACP is submitting this letter as a formal charge that Ms. Allison Richardson, school board member of Woodford County Public School, is guilty of immorality, misconduct in office, incompetency, willful neglect of duty, or nonfeasance. Therefore, is subject to removal according to KRS 156.132, an act regarding the removal or suspension of public school officers. Your careful consideration of this letter is much appreciated. Respectfully yours, Marcus D. Ray, Kentucky State Conference President. Due to the reference to legal statute in the letter, and in the interest of providing information and transparency to everyone interested in this issue, I've asked Mr. Chenoweth to explain that statute and its application to our board and other governing bodies in Kentucky. Mr. Chenoweth?
Good evening. Can you all hear me all right?
Yes.
The statute that's referenced in the letter is the authorizing statute that allows the Commissioner of Education and the State Board of Education to remove all manner of school personnel, superintendent, SBDM members, teachers, principals, and elected school board members. Nothing in that statute authorizes a local board of education to take any action relating to an individual member of that board. So there is, while the letter was copied to you, and appropriately so, there is not anything that the Woodford County Board of Education can do other than acknowledge receipt and basically wait and see if the Commissioner of Education or the State Board of Education takes any action.
Grant, this is Sherry. I have a question. Have you had conversations with board members about this matter before just now sharing that with all of us?
I'll answer that.
I'm getting a lot of.
I did forward it to
I'm getting a lot of. I'm sorry, I'm getting a lot of echo from your question, Sherry.
Oh, okay. Let me try again. Can you hear me now?
I can.
My question was, have you had conversations with any board members regarding this matter before tonight?
I forwarded the letter to Mr. Chenoweth today.
Not just the letter. I'm asking Mr. Chenoweth if he's had conversations with board members regarding this matter. And if you have, would you mind sharing it with everyone? Because I haven't been privy if there have been any emails or conversations with any members of the board.
All right, we are discussing this communication. If you want to bring this up later, I will say that I sent this to him today. I think there's a lot of interest in the community about what surrounds this, and that was my purpose, so that he would be prepared to look at this and answer this communication tonight, just as I have often said, talk to Mr. Hawkins about things that might come up. So.
I understand that. However, I'm just asking Mr. Chenoweth if there's any information that he's shared with one board member that hasn't been shared with the rest tonight. I believe that Mr. Chenoweth is not hired by a single board member. He represents 5 board members. And if there's been any communication, I would like to just have him share that with us openly and publicly.
Okay.
The other question I have, Mr. Chenoweth, is I understand we don't have the authority to remove or discipline a board member. However, I believe we have the authority and the duty to pass resolutions and a code of conduct. Is that correct?
You can pass resolutions or code of conduct, but there's no enforcement mechanism for a Board of Education to take any action against a member of the board.
I do understand that. Yeah, and I appreciate that. I just wanted to make sure that nothing prevents us from passing a resolution condemning the behavior or a code of conduct setting forth expectations of behavior. Nothing prevents that, correct?
Later on the agenda, we have a board of conduct. Generally, we have read a communication, and that's that. I thought it would be helpful for all of us and for the public to hear from Mr. Chenoweth since legal issues were raised in this letter. That is the sole purpose to him, and we can discuss these other matters when those agenda items come up. All right, the next thing on the agenda is proposed amendments to the agenda. Does any members have proposed amendments to the agenda?
Mrs. Elam, I do.
Madam Chairperson.
Ms. Bradley has stated she does, Mr. Wilson.
Okay.
Anyway.
I actually had a question. It was my understanding that we were going to have a COVID update on each of our agendas going forward. I thought we had decided that that would be a kind of constant agenda item.
It is not on this agenda. Do you want to make a motion to add it?
Yes, please.
And your motion is?
I move that we add an agenda item to receive an update on instruction with regards to COVID and in-person versus virtual instruction. It could be the same way it's been on other agendas.
Okay.
I thought Mr. Asher addressed that last week at the planning meeting because he went through quite a bit of information on the instructional piece.
I think that it needs to be each meeting because it's an ever-changing topic.
Okay, so your motion is to add an agenda item for an update on COVID. Now, we already have an agenda item on returning, I know it's here,
Resolution concern, I'm sorry. Consideration of allowing virtual students
Item
to
J on the
return
back,
to
consideration of allowing virtual students to return to in-person learning. But you have something in addition to that you want in your
I think we just
Madam
need.
Chair?
Yes, sir. Let's get the motion.
Oh, I'm
first.
sorry. I thought you were
All
saying
right, so
something.
the motion is to, go ahead, Danny, just make your motion.
If Mr. Wilson has something he wants to say, that's fine. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, I would like to add to the agenda this evening consideration of closing schools to in-person instruction pursuant to KRS 158.160, except as may be required by federal law for providing direct services to specified students. I make a motion to add that to the agenda.
Okay, we kind of interrupted Danny's motion. We'll go back to that. Let's just, if that's okay, Danny. Do we have a second on Mr. Wilson's motion?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second on adding to the agenda the.
Did you get that okay, Angel? I think it's the same as.
It was the same as was on the agenda last week, I believe.
With permission, I'll cut and paste the same language that we used
Yes,
previously.
yes.
Is that okay, Mr. Wilson?
Could you?
I didn't hear that.
Angel is just going to cut and paste the motion from the planning agenda last week for your motion tonight, the exact same wording. Is that acceptable to you?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
All right, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 5-0. All right, Ms. Bradley, let's come back to your motion for proposal.
I think we can cover everything in that. We can discuss COVID numbers and different questions. That's fine.
Okay. All right, any further proposed amendments to the agenda?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, you're welcome. Next we have superintendent's remarks.
Thank you, Ms. Eaglin. Good evening, and thank you for tuning in to our November Board of Education meeting. I know I have said this at prior meetings, but I want to say thank you again to all of our students and staff for their efforts in following our safety protocols and procedures. The diligence shown up to this point has allowed us to continue with in-person instruction. So again, thank you to our students and our staff. As we move forward, it is critical that the entire Woodford County community be even more vigilant in following the safety recommendations from the governor. This will help lower numbers in our county and give us the best opportunity to remain in person. I want to say a word of congratulations to our Woodford County High School women's cross country team. They finished 6th at the state meet held earlier this month. 7th grader Addison Moore finished 3rd, and sophomore Maggie Pugus finished 7th to lead the team. Again, congratulations on a great state meet and a great season. As we approach the Thanksgiving holiday, I know it will be different for a lot of families. We may not be able to participate in some family traditions and see some family that we have typically seen in the past. Even with these changes, my hope is that everyone is able to stay healthy and still experience the true meaning of this special holiday. Thank you again for tuning in this evening. It's an honor to serve as your superintendent, and I know with all of us working together, we can become the flagship school district in Kentucky.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. Okay, next we have the treasurer's report. We heard from Mr. Martello last week. We have a motion to accept the treasurer's report.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Wilson and a second by Ms. Springate. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Opportunity for audience and public comment. You go? Okay.
Okay, first is from Robin Espinoza. I will keep this short and sweet. Mr. Hawkins is failing our kids of Woodford County by not allowing every student to return to in-person learning. The Board of Education has begged and pleaded for the kids to return to school for the sake of their mental health. Mr. Hawkins, please listen to the kids and open in-person school up for all. It is sad that he has a history of not protecting the kids from harm. Do what is right, protect the children. Robin Espinoza. Piper White, Woodford County School Board members. As a taxpayer of Woodford County, I am asking the elected members of the school board to immediately remove Superintendent Scott Hawkins from his duties. citing the superintendent's failure to provide a fair and consistent policy to educate all of our district's children, specifically in regards to virtual learning. Parents across our county have begged and pleaded with board members and on social media for their children to be given the opportunity to return to in-person instruction. Mr. Hawkins refuses to allow children to attend Woodford County Public Schools. Is this not his direct responsibility to ensure equitable access to quality instruction? How many students have disenrolled from WCPS for either homeschooling, another district, or dropped out altogether? It is the responsibility of the elected board members of Woodford County to hold the top administrator, superintendent, accountable for his policy, to speak on behalf of your constituents, and to advocate for all our district's children. Who is advocating for feedback from our parents? Where is the data regarding disenrollment? We must aspire to become a whole district, to listen and respond to the differing viewpoints of various constituents. Mr. Hawkins repeatedly refuses to listen to board members regarding our community's concerns, and in fact grows defensive when inquired on policy. He is single-handedly failing our children. How can he leave any child behind? Please remember this power struggle by removing the superintendent of his duties immediately. We must have leadership that advocates for all our children and enacts equitable policy to ensure all voices are heard. Thank you, Piper White, Woodford County taxpayer and advocate. Nicholas Banks, to the Woodford County School Board. As a parent of a student and a faith leader in the community of Versailles, I want to express my concerns for the remarks that were made by Woodford County School Board member Allison Richardson. Ultimately, our goal as a community should be that every person, regardless of color, gender, or religious preference, be accepted and treated with the utmost respect by everyone in our community. It is apparent through several of her social media posts that Mrs. Richardson does not represent that ultimate goal. Given her position, where she is an appointed representative of what is one of the most diverse entities in the community, she should be aware that her behavior affects and reflects those in which she serves. Because of her past and recent behavior on her social media, Mrs. Richardson has shown that she does not uphold these parameters and therefore should be removed from her position. If she doesn't understand how her commentary is not a good representation of her role, then her being unaware dictates that she is not competent for the role. Versailles has been and should remain that place of diversity that is a respecter of all. As a parent, especially being a District 2 resident, I want those in place that represent the design of our community to be an example to the students she represents. Nicholas Banks. Shelby Newman. Dear Woodford County School Board members, it came to my deepest concern that Woodford County School Board member Allison Richardson has made some very inappropriate, hurtful, discriminatory, racist Facebook posts and comments directed towards African Americans, as well as the Black Lives Matter and the Buy Black Friday movement. It is important to note that this is not the first occasion in which Mrs. Richardson has made inappropriate, hurtful, discriminatory, racist Facebook posts and comments toward a specific group of people. In August of 2019, Mrs. Richardson shared a post on Facebook that was degrading toward Hispanics. What Mrs. Richardson has posted is offensive to many students and their family members that reside here in Woodford County. As a school board member, you are to abide by a code of ethics. Mrs. Richardson's Facebook posts and comments go against the school board policy, quote, AAC non-discrimination, as well as Woodford County's mission statement that in part states that you are, quote, in partnership with families and communities. And by no part do these Facebook posts and comments convey that of a leader. Mrs. Richardson's Facebook posts and comments do not align with Woodford County Public Schools' core values. They are listed as follows: partnership, respect, integrity, determination, and excellence. In no way are Mrs. Richardson's posts and comments promoting any of these core values. These posts do not promote partnership. They promote negative diversity within the community. These posts do not promote respect or consideration for others. They are disrespectful and hurtful. These posts do not promote integrity. By Mrs. Richardson making these posts, she was harming our community as a whole. These posts do not promote determination. How are students supposed to achieve their goals knowing that this is what a school board member thinks of them? And most definitely, in no way do these posts and comments promote excellence. This is not the way to set a high standard for yourself as well as for your students or community. As a former student of Woodford County High School, I am deeply concerned for the fate of our community and for the partnership, respect, integrity, determination, and excellence of our school board. It is only morally right that Mrs. Richardson be removed from her seat on the Woodford County Board of Education. If she is not, it will convey to the students and members of the community here in Woodford County that this behavior is acceptable. From a very concerned community member, Shelby Newman. This letter is signed by several: Nicholas D. Banks, Bud Brown, Sherry Brown, Annette Muniz, Brian Trogett, Mayor, Joanne Brown, Julie Hawkins, Keegan Strongberg, Mike Murray, Chief of Police, Tony Wilson, Jr. Dear board members, thank you for continuing to allow public comment during these challenging times. In response to the social unrest across our country, a diverse group of citizens, now known as the Unity Task Force, began meeting around the mission of promoting unity within the Woodford County community. Our group meets monthly to discuss pertinent issues, brainstorm ideas, and seek solutions. Thus far, the Unity Task Force has sponsored 2 student-led events, encouraging respect and understanding among all races and ethnicities. While we feel our community is a wonderful place to live and work, our task force acknowledges there is much work to be done in terms of equity and equality. One important function of our group is to bring attention and awareness to situations creating undue tension within our community. For this reason, the Unity Task Force feels compelled to issue a statement condemning the repeated, racially insensitive social media posts of school board member Allison Richardson. The language and content included in her comments are divisive and undermine the important work currently being pursued by our task force and like-minded groups. It is disheartening to see this type of behavior from an elected official. Mrs. Richardson's failure to apologize after being approached multiple times by members of the African American and Latino communities was a leading factor in our decision to speak out on this matter. Also troubling is the fact some board members chose not to publicly address Mrs. Richardson's inappropriate actions, given this is not the first time it has occurred. Due to this pattern of behavior, it is our hope a code of conduct will be adopted for board members addressing the use of social media and respect for all people. Additionally, we are calling on the board to issue another statement in response to the local unrest similar to the one approved in July regarding national events. In closing, we again thank you for the opportunity to speak on this matter and invite you as individuals or as a collective board to join our work of building capacity for empathy and understanding so that we may thrive as a unified community. Sincerely, Nicholas Banks, Andrea Bug Brown, Sherry Brown, Annette Muniz, Brian Trogett, Mayor, Joanne Brown, Julie Hawkins, Keegan Stromberg, Mike Murray, Chief of Police, Tony Wilson, Jr. Kristen Wilson, WCPS board members, I am writing this letter to ask that you consider implementing a social media policy as well as a code of conduct policy for all board members. Due to the ongoing actions on social media that continue to disrespect minorities, I feel that this would help to protect those you vow to serve. Over the past 2 years, this board has been confrontational with each other and Mr. Hawkins publicly as well as privately. The deep-rooted dislike and disagreements have spewed over into countless meetings. It has really become an embarrassment when the bickering continues week after week. Even if this behavior is not your intent, this is the perception that is given. I have the privilege of knowing several of you personally, and I know you have a beautiful heart. I know you want what is best for our kids. I know you care. However, being an elected official puts you in the public eye. We watch what you do and say. The students watch you. My prayer is that the board members can be people my children look up to. I want them to see problem solvers, not problem causers. Several of you have said or implied that you do not wish to speak about the behavior of other board members during meetings. If a policy was in place, this would in fact take care of the inappropriate behavior, so you wouldn't be put on the spot. You would be supported and protected by the policy that is created. I typically deal with social media drama with my students. I tell them to be careful what they post on social media. I never thought I would have to deal with this behavior coming from adults. Now is the time you can step up as a board and do something about it. This policy would be a step in the right direction. In closing, thank you for your work you do for our students. You have little people looking up to you to do what is right. Kristen Wilson. Robin Espinoza. The written word oftentimes gets misunderstood. I believe this is the case with the recent Facebook post of Allison Richardson, Board of Education member. I believe she meant no harm with the post and was standing up for all of the businesses. Ms. Richardson has a big heart and will help anyone. Robin Espinoza. Sierra Spalding. Hello, I'm reaching out again this week to echo my concerns in regards to our board enacting a code of conduct and social media policy. I recognize that some of our board members can use discretion and make wise decisions concerning their social media, but apparently that is not the case for all who are currently serving on our board. Allison Richardson has disgraced our county and our board due to her inability to maintain integrity and decorum in her position as an elected member of our school board. Her disrespect for my family is personal. As I'll reiterate, she not only disrespected us as Black business owners, but she lied to my husband in stating that she would resign and refuses to speak to us as her constituents. This is unacceptable, and Richardson should resign from our board immediately. At the time of submission of this letter, we have nearly 500 signatures on a local petition that was started a mere 5 days ago. To amass this level of support in conjunction with the people who have chosen to come out today and protest for her removal, all within the context of a community where she has regularly threatened and attempted to intimidate people via social media for speaking out against her actions, demonstrates that our community wants and deserves better. We are sitting at a crossroads, and I sincerely hope that we can move in the direction of positive change that benefits all students. To our board members, we ask that you do the right thing. Please establish a code of conduct that includes a social media policy. Our students should no longer have to be subjected to the blatant racism and cultural insensitivity that we have had to experience from Richardson during her term. This would be a step in the right direction, ensuring equity and respect for all students. Regards, Sierra Spalding. Connie Sutherland. Dear board members, I believe this board has lost all track of what their duties are. Way too much time and effort is being spent on trying to create a policy to hush elected officials instead of focusing on our kids, which is the most important issue at hand. I would also like to inquire as to why Ms. Springate continues to add this topic to the board meeting agenda when the board has paid at least 2 attorneys that have advised them that creating a board member policy has no legal bearing. It is basically a handshake deal, and the First Amendment is intact. There simply is no reason to keep beating this dead horse. I realize most of this is coming out because some people were supposedly offended by a post Ms. Richardson posted on her personal Facebook page. It is my opinion that Ms. Richardson's posts in no way affect her position as a board member or the job she does to advocate for the students of Woodford County. I wholeheartedly support Ms. Richardson as my board member representative. Thank you, Connie Sutherland. Marty Day. It is really pretty simple. Mrs. Richardson made racist remarks once, hurt our Woodford County students and their families, apologized, and never once made any effort to improve her beliefs. She has done the exact same thing, this time with another segment of our population. Likely she will apologize again tonight, but that will be as meaningless as the first one. She has had her chance, and now it is time to replace her with someone who has the best interests of all Woodford Countyans at heart. Please do what you know is best for the students in our community. That does include a well-thought-out code of conduct and social media policy that mirrors the ones for Woodford County students and staff. That does not include Mrs. Richardson on the Woodford County Board of Education. She has tarnished you all as a board, but you have the opportunity to set the record straight. 4 of you are not racists. Sincerely, Marty Day, taxpayer, parent, teacher, believer. Grayson Vandergrift. For public comments, Ms. Richardson's most recent comments written on her Facebook page fit a pattern of complete lack of understanding of what it takes to create a truly equal society. As an elected official, she must represent every citizen in her jurisdiction, whether they are black, white, brown, whether they voted for her or not. Ms. Richardson is also human, and like me and everyone else, is prone to mistakes and deserves a second chance to atone for them. However, a second chance can't be attained without remorse, and at this point, remorse can't simply be a statement of apology. I believe that until Ms. Richardson makes a meaningful act towards reconciliation, healing cannot begin. That action seems entirely to be up to her. I wish I didn't have to make this statement, but with a new wave of Jim Crow sentiment sweeping parts of this nation, I cannot sit silent as if black and brown students are somehow less valued than white ones. I sincerely hope Ms. Richardson does the right thing so that healing and reconciliation can begin. Grayson Vandergrift, Mayor of City of Midway. Reverend Floyd Green, to the Woodford County Board of Education. As per request, I do hereby state my concerns and recommendations to all concerned in regards to the development of codes of conduct for school board members and each individual who is involved in educating our children. I'm perplexed by the necessity to address the issues that concerns so many in our community. As a pastor and community leader in Woodford County, I hope the time will come when codes and creeds of conduct will no longer be needed by organizations and institutions governed by elected officials. However, in the absence of principled and ethical moral character by each individual, it becomes highly necessary to draft and adopt codes of conduct that govern the behavior of each leader. The heart of leadership is character. It describes, defines, and demonstrates who we are, both privately and publicly. Character is based upon our core values. It is clear that Mrs. Richardson does not value the emotions and feelings of the entire community she has been elected to serve. Therefore, I highly recommend the development of codes of conduct for the Woodford County Board of Education to protect the integrity of our roles, relationships, and responsibilities as educators of our community. Thanks in advance for your consideration of this. Until he comes, Reverend Floyd Green. Ryan Asher, submitted on behalf of the Woodford County Public Schools Equity Team. The Woodford County Public Schools Equity Team strives to advocate for the success of all students with a dedicated focus to underserved and underrepresented populations. We have continued to work on this advocacy over the past year by placing intentional emphasis on increasing all stakeholders' opportunities to develop empathy, respect, and appreciation for differences in backgrounds, cultures, and/or other human characteristics. Despite the recent events in our community, the equity team remains committed to our work. The actions of one do not reflect our dedication to creating a more inclusive school community that, above all else, respects and values differences. We will continue the work of educating, inspiring, and uplifting all stakeholders in the Woodford County community. That was by Ryan Asher on behalf of the WCPS Equity Team. And that concludes.
Thank you so much, Ms. Williams. Okay, the next thing on the agenda is the consent agenda. Does any member want any item to be removed from the consent agenda? All right, Mr. Robbins, do you have anything else you want to say about it?
No, ma'am.
Okay, do we have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Wilson and a second by Ms. Springate. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? The consent agenda passes 5-0. We'll now go into our regular agenda. Item A, accept notification of personnel matters.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Wilson and a second by Ms. Springate. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Item A passes 5-0. Accept notification of payment of bills.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Wilson and a second by Ms. Springate. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Approve the meeting minutes of the October 19th, 2020 board meeting. Ms. Richardson was absent, so she will not be voting on this. Do I have
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Wilson and a second by Ms. Springate on item C. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Item D, approve meeting minutes of the October 26th, 2020 board meeting. Ms. Bradley was absent, so she will not be voting on this. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Wilson and a second by Ms. Springate. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Next is the crime prevention through environmental design, CPTED principles checklist for Kentucky Public Schools. I don't know if Mr. Locke is on this, but I think you talked to us about this last week, and this is underway. Is that correct?
We've already reviewed and gone through it all, so it takes board action to approve it to be submitted.
Okay. Do you have a motion to approve the CPTED principles checklist for Kentucky Public Schools?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Wilson and a second by Ms. Springate. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Approve hiring of Kentucky School Plant Management Association to facilitate local planning committee facilities plan. I think Mr. Hawkins spoke of this last week, and Mr. Locke also weighed in that they had worked together to bring this about. So, do I have a
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Wilson and a second by Ms. Springate on item F. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item G, architectural and engineering services for district facilities plan. This is the agreement with Mr. Locke. I think it was attached to our agenda for everyone to review. Do we have a motion on item G, the architectural and engineering services for the DFP?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Wilson and a second by Ms. Springate. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item H, adopt a code of conduct for the board. This was Ms. Springate. Was there anything attached to our agenda, any kind of sample that you were thinking about? Did I miss it, or?
No, I didn't attach anything. I just wanted to, before I make a motion, I just want to provide an overview as to why I put this item on the agenda. I certainly was not told by one attorney or even two that we could not do a code of conduct. So I just want to clarify that. And perhaps we can get to the bottom of that with the attorneys later. But I asked for this to be placed on the agenda because over the past couple of weeks, numerous people have reached out regarding Ms. Richardson's social media posts and other questionable actions. So on August the 7th, 2019, that was our opening day for the 2019-20 school year for Woodford County Schools. Dwayne Wright, a minority speaker, was invited to give a keynote address regarding the importance of forming positive relationships with students, no matter what their race or social status. And if you recall, all 4 members were present for this assembly with the exception of Mrs. Richardson. Sadly, while we were sitting in the gym engaging with Mr. Reed, Ms. Richardson was posting this message. Yes, and give 0 SHITS, let anyone think about it, hashtag my time, hashtag be selfish. What message does that send to our students and staff? Ironically, the following day, after Mr. Reed's important message on relationships, Mrs. Richardson posted an offensive, inappropriate Mexican word of the day meme. Her post completely went against the message heard by all the staff the previous day. And as you know, members of our community became outraged. The story was covered by both WLEX and the Woodford Sun. Tonight is not the first time we've experienced community unrest as a result of Ms. Richardson's social media activity. In the midst of all of this happening, Ms. Richardson made this post, and I mean it, HELL, so save your breath, hashtag public post, hashtag for the fans, hashtag pot stirrer, with a graphic that says, No one is harder on me than me, so take your judgment and shove it up your curse word. Does that sound like behavior we would expect from a board elected
Do
official?
you have a specific board policy that you're producing?
Yes, if you will just give me a moment, please. The August 26th board meeting, if you recall, looked a lot like it did out front this evening. Numerous people spoke out during public comment portion of the meeting, expressing their frustrations about Ms. Richardson's offensive post. The community comment did elicit a response and an apology from Ms. Richardson. At this point, she said she now realized words and jokes can be hurtful. She also made a promise to have personal conversations with others, regardless of their race, who want the best for our children. However, we heard last week and once again this evening that she is now refusing to speak with people she has offended, staff, teachers, and constituents in her district. Just a few months after her apology, I couldn't believe she was once again making racial posts. This post was poking fun at Asians, and at the same time frame, she made a post after the UK U of L basketball game last winter that stated, both of these teams aren't anything more than trashy hood thugs, and Cal needs to go. Here, there, I said it. Now, why would you refer to predominantly African American 18 to 22-year-old male college athletes as trashy hood thugs?
So what is your...
In May, along with all schools... I just would like to finish, please. In May, along with all school board members, we completed an assessment aimed at determining the strengths and weaknesses in terms of cultural competence. Following the assessments, trainings were scheduled to help interpret and understand the results. Ms. Richardson is the only board member that failed to attend this virtual training. It seems as though all board members would want to attend the training for equity, given it's a main focus and priority of our district. In July, Governor Beshear ordered a mask mandate just as the board was approving a plan for all students to return to school. The board voted to require all students, even kindergartners, wear a mask at all times during the school day, with the exception of lunch and at mask breaks. Posts 5, 6, and 7 all refer to this. The first comment states, yes, but Andy needs attention, so he's going to try to force us to wear a mask.
Sorry.
I won't follow the lead, I'll pay the fine.
Let's please
Debbie, I'm almost finished so that I can make my motion. I have to go through the history so that people can understand. Part of the problem is this board has refused to allow anybody to speak, and I just want to get through this. This is my motion.
I will take exception.
The second one is 2020's been a wild year, man. And then talks about getting
Do you
done.
want us to go through everything?
The next one said that we are all in this together except Andy. He doesn't get an F about us. True.
Miss Evelyn.
So what I'm trying to do is just establish the entire thing so people can see what's going on. I would be happy to listen after I finish to other people, and I would ask that other people refer the same services. I am speaking right now. I have this motion. I have the floor. This is my agenda item, and I would like to finish, please. So, the most, and the recent case of rising, she posted, shove the mask. Why would a board member that voted to approve masks for our students and staff make these types of posts defying the mask mandate? And what message does that send to our staff and our
Okay,
students?
I'm calling a recess. 5 minutes. 5 minutes. We'll be back, Bob. You can shut it down. We'll be back in 5 minutes.
Mr. Chenoweth, is it acceptable to shut down a meeting in the middle of the meeting? Is that allowable?
I'm shutting it down. I'm taking a recess.
I'm asking Mr. Chenoweth for his advice.
We're muted to him right now.
We'll call the meeting back to order in order to hear Mr. Chenoweth's response. Ms. Springate asked if it was acceptable for the chair to call a recess in the middle of a meeting.
The chair has the duty to maintain order, and with 3 different people talking over microphones, I couldn't hear a thing of what was going on, and I'm sure that means the entire viewing public couldn't follow along, and that's a violation of the Open Meetings Act. So I think calling timeout was not just okay, but was required under the Open Meetings Act.
Okay, thank you. Let me ask you another question. We have before us an agenda item to adopt.
Are we in recess?
No, I've called the meeting back to order to hear Mr. Chenoweth. I said that I'm sorry, Angel, I called the meeting back to order to hear Mr. Chenoweth's answer to Ms. Springate's question of whether or not it was acceptable to call a recess in the middle of a meeting by the chair. The agenda item before us is adopt a code of conduct for the board. We are, Ms. Springate is reading every social media post that she has found relevant to the particulars of Ms. Richardson's situation. Do you feel this is relevant to this board, to this agenda item?
Mr. Chenoweth, if I could just speak, I'm merely trying to state for the public and for other board members why there is a need for a code of conduct and a board member social media policy. And I feel like I listen when other board members speak. I do not interrupt. I do not shout over them. And I don't really appreciate the chair choosing to do that to me and only me. It appears that she just wants to silence anyone who has an opposing viewpoint. I asked that this item be placed on the agenda, and I'm giving the background prior to my making my motion, especially in light of public comment saying that somehow 2 attorneys had said that this can't be discussed, and I've never heard of any of that before. No attorneys have communicated that to me, and the board chair certainly hasn't shared that if it's the case.
I believe the public comment was about the social media policy, but, and we certainly got a big...
Mr. Chenoweth, is it permissible for me to continue?
You just interrupted me.
I apologize. I asked Mr. Chenoweth a question and you interrupted before he could answer.
Is it my turn?
Yes.
Please.
Thank you. I understand the background being given for the reason for the motion. In the normal course of events, I think you all fairly closely follow procedural rules that the discussion of why you support or oppose a motion comes after a motion has been seconded. And I don't know if this, Ms. Springate, is a belief potentially by you or prediction that if your motion doesn't get a second, this is your only opportunity to give all of that background. What I started saying earlier in response to the letter you all received, I think is partly responsive to what's being discussed right now. If the board passed a social media policy that on its face says it's to be applicable to board members, if they passed a code of conduct that is on its face said to be applicable to each other, that's not enforceable. There is nothing within your statutory authority that allows the board to police the conduct or the social media conduct of the other members of the board. So passing a policy that can have no teeth, that can have no enforcement, that is just a feel-good policy of the majority of members want to be able to say that another member or other members have not held themselves up to this standard is just aspirational. It is, if there's no teeth to the policy, if it can't be enforced, then I do think the board is acting beyond its legal authority and even adopting the policy.
Grant, I know we have adopted numerous resolutions, including the equality statement, that didn't have a provision for sanctions or punishments. And I'm very aware that multiple boards have adopted resolutions and codes of conduct within Kentucky and outside of Kentucky. Is there something that would prohibit us from condemning these remarks, number one, in a resolution form? And number two, is there something that prohibits us from adopting a code of conduct for board members and a social media policy?
And those are 2 separate things, right? Those are 2 separate agenda items. So
They are, but the law pretty well goes hand in hand on both of them.
okay.
Is there anything that prohibits you from,
Adopting a resolution.
I think part of your question.
Adopting a resolution condemning board member behavior, number one. And number two, adopting a code of conduct that sets expectations for board member behavior and social media use.
Yeah, as to the first question, addressing conduct, addressing speech, you're talking, I think most of what I heard tonight was about social media posts, and the First Amendment does a pretty good job of
and then the behavior
saying,
that follows.
Go ahead.
If the behavior is social media posts and interactions with constituents, then that is protected by the First Amendment as expressive activity or expressive speech. And if I were sitting in the shoes of someone like Ms. Richardson and the other 4 members or 3 members voted to censure, to reprimand, to adopt a resolution against me, I would view that as being a substantial chilling effect on my free speech. And I would take that as retaliatory against me having exercised my free speech. And since the board doesn't have the authority to police the behaviors of its members, it would just be a gratuitous act by a majority of members to criticize or to reprimand or to retaliate against somebody else for exercising free speech.
What about?
I would have trouble figuring out the defenses to that.
What about when the free speech causes harm to students, violates the code of conduct for teachers and staff, violates the mission of the school, violates the equality statement of the school? What about when that happens? What then? Because I have examples from other states where boards, and examples from as close as Fayette County, where boards condemn in resolutions behavior by members. And so my question is, how are all these other boards doing it if you think that it's not really, I understand that there's no teeth in it, we can't remove her, but other boards certainly do condemn behavior, and again, not just the free speech component, but the part where it's tied to actual behaviors that cause harm and that go against district policy and vision, and I guess that's my question. And so the reason that I wanted to go through this list of things was just to put all of the information out there and to have, the entirety of the situation be visible to the public and also to the board so that we can decide if this is something that we could adopt a code of conduct and a social media policy and really just a resolution condemning this behavior. And I think all of those things are allowable is what I'm hearing you say. I certainly don't want to censor anybody. I would like people to self-censor. I would like people to follow the mission and the values of our schools and to not harm our students and our board and our school system.
Part of that, again, is just what you're wanting to do, or sounds like you're wanting to do, is very much just aspirational. The 5 board members are each elected officials from different constituencies. You, by statute, are to adopt rules and regulations governing the conduct of employees and governing the conduct of students. There is not similar language allowing you to adopt rules governing the conduct of each other. The law is what makes you all different than employees and students, and you don't have the ability to enforce those same standards as to yourself. You're right, it is aspirational. It is what you would hope for the example to be set, self-censoring, if that's what you want to call it, but the judgment of whether that has occurred or not happens every 4 years at the ballot box. You are answerable to the constituents of your board division, not to each other.
Leah, are you done?
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The agenda item we are on is adopt a code of conduct for the board. We have not had a motion. We do not have a code of conduct language in front of us to weigh in on, or, to say, well, I like that, but perhaps this. This is a very serious matter. We all spoke to it last week. But there are other issues in the board that I would like to see in a code of conduct beyond this. I know that our school board code of conduct has very strongly that once the majority of a board has made a decision, the others follow it. I'd like to see that. We have a board of conduct or a code of conduct replicated in our Woodford County Board of Conduct. There's other issues I would like to see that are not related to this. That does not mean that I don't care about this issue and consider it very serious. And to portray it that way would be disingenuous. So I'm wondering, we don't even have a motion on the floor. We don't have a code of conduct before us to vote on. I know most organizations have a code of conduct, including KSBA. We all know that we can't really, believe me, I know that I cannot enforce if the majority vote goes one way, that all members will go along with that. I mean, we just can't enforce those things, but they are aspirational, and there's, in my opinion, it's fine to have aspirational conduct codes. So I guess I'm wondering if might be best if we have a couple of board members sit down together, take input from other board members, come up with a code of conduct that we would have before us to vote on, so that we actually know what specific language, what things we're voting on. What do you feel about that, Ms. Ringate?
I'm sorry, can I interject?
Sure.
I just want to clarify with Mr. Chenoweth, did you say that it is your legal advice that adopting a code of conduct would open us up to possible litigation?
Specifically, I was responding to the question about adopting a resolution as to specific actions of another member, especially where, from what I've heard, those specific actions are primarily social media speech activities, and calling it conduct, even if it's speech, doesn't make it conduct. It still would be adopting a resolution to adversely address another member's speech activities. That, I think, could open you up to a risk of legal exposure. Adopting a feel-good code of conduct that can't be enforced doesn't open you up to any exposure of liability. It does, I think, open you up to the PR problem of then having people want to know why you're not enforcing the policy that you can't enforce because you have no authority to enforce it. So you would be constantly faced with people saying, well, how does she get away? How does he get away? Why does this member get to do this? You have a code of conduct that they're violating, and you would be constantly answering the citizen, that policy is just aspirational. We don't have the authority to enforce that. The State Board of Education gets to discipline school board members. The Office of Education Accountability gets to investigate those matters. The Attorney General's office can bring an action to remove board members. We adopted a feel-good policy that we can't enforce.
Thank you. I think now would be a good time for the recess, Ms. Evelyn.
Okay. We'll come back and bring this up again because I think Ms. Ringate wanted to make a motion. We'll need to get a second. We can, how long do you need, or would you like this? Let's do 5 minutes. I kind of cut the last 5 minutes short. And then we'll come back. One thing I kind of hope we think about, I understood the social media policy to be separate from the code of conduct policy because those were two separate agenda items. So how those two are going to go together, we might want to think about the next 5 minutes. We'll be recessed for 5 minutes. Thank you. Guys, I'm not ready to call this back to order. Allison and Ambrose, are you ready? We're going to call back the meeting back to order.
I'm ready.
Allison?
I'm ready, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We are on item H, adopt a code of conduct for the board. Do we have a motion to adopt a code of conduct for the board? I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Evelyn and a second by Ms. Springate.
May we finish discussion now, Ms. Evelyn?
I think that we need to know what is before us to adopt. And I would, like I said before we're after the motions, if we had maybe a couple of members work together to come up with a code of conduct that they could bring back to the board for their suggestions and approval, then if we had it's hard to adopt a code of conduct when we don't know what that is or what it's going to say. So that would be my proposed, my suggestion to move forward on this issue.
Oh, thank you. I would like to finish going through the timeline, but I understand that you don't want me to do that, and you don't want me to say that.
Is it going to end in something that specific language you want in a board code of conduct? I think.
Yes.
And then should I allow every other member here to go through maybe things that we think other members have done that have broken codes of conduct?
Certainly.
And Ms. Evelyn, when Ms. Springate is done, I'd like to make a comment about her comments, if I could, please, since we're in discussion.
Well, that's only fair. Go ahead.
Okay. I guess before the screening started, I was talking about.
I think we can agree that Ms. Springate was the one who
in July. Thank you. In July, Governor Beshear ordered a mask mandate just as the board was approving a plan for all students to return to school. The board voted to require all students, even kindergartners, to wear a mask at all times during the school day with the exception of lunch and outside mask breaks. The first comment by Ms. Richardson states, yes, but Andy needs attention, so he is going to try to force us to wear masks. I won't follow his lead, I'll pay a fine. A second comment states, we're all in this together except Andy. He doesn't give a F, he spells it out, about us. Truth. And most recently, as cases are rising, she posted, shove the mask. Why would a board member that voted to approve masks for all students and staff make these types of posts defying the mask mandates and our own policy? What message does this send to our students and staff? July 27, 2020, we as a board approved a racial equality statement in response to the social unrest in our country. The statement was approved by a 4-0 vote. Again, what does it say to our community that Ms. Richardson was not present for this important discussion and vote? At this point, I'm sure you see that there's a pattern. Just last month, a community member made a post on her personal Facebook account complaining about school lunches. I'm still stunned by Ms. Richardson's comment to this post. I gotcha. I'm BITCHING as loud as I can, but these ears don't seem to care. I wouldn't feed my dogs that SHIT. Can you imagine how this response made our cooks and cafeteria staff feel? Finally, here we are this evening, again dealing with racially insensitive posts. I can hardly believe the first line of the post that says, well, this is it. I'm officially going to have some solid haters. It's perfectly clear that Ms. Richardson knew this message would be offensive to some, but she didn't care and posted it anyway. The tipping point for all of us should be the fact that this type of dysfunctional behavior is and will continue to negatively impact our schools if there isn't some type of intervention. One of our main areas of focus this year is equity. And instead of supporting and advancing this work, she has undermined the process every step of the way. After last week's meeting, one would think Ms. Richardson would take a break from social media. That was not the case. I believe this post is a threat, and therefore it heightens my concern. I'm certain that any student making a post like this would be required to undergo a threat assessment. This post states, Your time doesn't matter when my reputation is the perfect deflection. And you're paying for this. Wait for it. This is not acceptable behavior from an elected official. There are many other posts that I could have included. I believe the evidence this evening demonstrates a pattern of behavior that is unethical, racially biased, and not aligned with the mission of the Woodford County School District. Ms. Richardson's behavior is destructive to the work of the board, and it brings into question her ability to make decisions for the best interests of all kids. For this reason, I am calling on the board in the form of a motion to adopt a resolution or issue a written statement calling for Ms. Richardson to resign.
Is that on our agenda?
Yes, it's under the adopt a code of conduct for the board and board member social policy. I believe it fits in there. That's the reasoning for the motion for the resolution request has to deal with
So the entire
code of conduct and
code
social.
of conduct for the board that you were referencing in your agenda item is around this issue. It's no other.
No, it's actually not. I mean, I would also like to make a motion that we adopt a code of conduct that outlines expectations for board behavior, including appropriate use of social media. And at this point, I believe a code of conduct needs to be created in full view of the public during an open work session, where all board members are present and all board members can contribute, and also where the public can have the ability to watch and hold us accountable.
Okay, so there's nothing as far as a code of conduct to vote on tonight. This is something that you're anticipating we develop in a work session. And then once it's developed, we would adopt it by vote.
Well, I believe it makes sense that everyone would be involved, so it's not just my code of conduct or anyone else's code of conduct, but it would be something similar to the code of conduct that we have in place for staff. I have one here that we have in place for students.
Okay. Ms. Springate, I'm going to let you work on that then if you want to get a work session organized.
Can we get our calendars out and do that now?
Sure. Is this something you want to do before the new board takes action?
Yeah, I believe it would be helpful and useful. Does anyone have a suggestion for dates? Dates that work well? You want to wait till after Thanksgiving? Maybe the first week of December?
What do you say? Why don't you just throw some dates out?
I don't think, if we're looking at December, then I would advocate for letting a new board be seated when it's only a month. But again, I just want to make clear, I understand your points, Sherry, but doing this will be ignoring the legal advice that we have been given.
Grant, can I ask once again, does anything prohibit this board from adopting a code of conduct that sets forth the expectations of board member behavior? Is there anything in the law that prohibits that?
There is not anything in the law that prohibits that.
And do other school districts in Kentucky and other states, I have an example here from Wisconsin, other school districts seem to have this code of conduct, and it's just an expectation that board members follow that. And again, it's not something we're saying that we would go out and somehow punish board members for not following it. It simply sets an expectation that the public can look to us to uphold, that we as elected officials on our honor would want to uphold, and because of ethical guidelines and training through KSBA, and also after we review the conduct for the students and the staff that we expect of them, just a guide, basically, that helps us hold each other accountable, hold ourselves accountable, and allows the public to hold us accountable too. Is there any harm in that? Is there any legal risk?
I have to pause when you talk about holding each other accountable, because the board doesn't have the authority to hold each other to account for any policy that you might adopt. So you're talking about individual board members using an unenforceable policy potentially as a cudgel against each other just for talking points. Also, I have to just give a caveat. I'm not licensed to practice law in any other state, so I don't know what the board members, school board structure is in Wisconsin or anywhere else. So heck, they may have the authority to remove each other. So telling me that another state has a board member code of conduct doesn't tell me much. I am aware that other school districts, other boards of education have adopted those. If it's just clear that it's aspirational and has no teeth, then that's fine. It's certainly within your own authority to adopt it. Just like adopting a resolution calling for people to donate to the United Way. It's a feel-good thing. So you're certainly not prohibited from doing that.
And again, to Ms. Evelyn's point, it wouldn't just be about social media or just be about, those sorts of things. It could include, and should include, lots of other things. I have the student code of conduct here and reviewed the teacher and staff code of conduct before tonight. And a lot of it really is aspirational. The purpose, it just says things that we would all expect and really would hope that we would hold ourselves accountable to do. Respect from other students and school personnel, safety from physical harm, and freedom from verbal abuse. Just really basic kinds of things that guide students, parents, and staff. So it would be, I would think the code of conduct would be something more of that. And again, we could just, pick a date in the 1st of December, or Ms. Bradley, if you'd rather wait until after the 1st of the year. I just feel like this is something that's long overdue and really sends the message that we hear the public and that we understand their concerns and that we are certainly willing to abide by a code of conduct that we come up with as individuals. And it just helps us hold ourselves accountable and allows the public to hold us accountable and have expectations for our behavior. So I have my calendar out.
I think KSB has a code of conduct that we could build upon. There is
Definitely.
a code of conduct that we live under as school board members. So maybe we could just fine tune that. It's not that we don't have a code of conduct that we live under. Maybe we just want to expand upon it. Graham,
The KSBA, just by point of clarity, the KSBA code of conduct, since it's quoted in the letter you read earlier, it also is just aspirational.
Right, I know under all of these are aspirational. Is there a difference between having a code of conduct that says you will, even if you're the losing member, you'll vote to further the majority vote, as opposed to a code of conduct position that says you will not post these things on social media or say them? That last one is clearly a constitutional right, where the first one isn't. Is that the distinction you're trying to make? Because I guess I thought that was going to be the distinction between the code of conduct and the social media post. Where it's more risky to do the one that is a direct threat maybe to First Amendment rights. Am I missing that?
I didn't hear the first example you gave of
let me give an example. That you read all your materials. I know that's one of the KSBA ones. That you come to a meeting having read all of your materials and prepared to speak on the issues. So that is a code of conduct that we have through KSBA. Now that doesn't really, of course, it's aspirational. We all understand that, but it in no way, if we said, oh, you've been bad for not reading your materials, we're not really going after a constitutional right. Whereas when we say, and I think that's because that's what you were talking about with the First Amendment, when we say, oh, no, you can't post these things on social media, that's more directed at a constitutional right. Were you trying to make that distinction, or am I?
No,
is there a distinction
you're correct. Between those two things, you're right.
So we have to be more careful when we do the ones that affect the First Amendment, whether we understand they're aspirational. Is there a risk in doing them in the first place? That's what I guess I was unclear at.
There is a notion under First Amendment law that's called prior restraint. That is most of the time prohibited, which is if you threaten to take action, or if you try to prohibit somebody from engaging in speech activity, and that the reason that they refrain from engaging, exercising their First Amendment right is the fear of repercussion, then that itself, the creation of the rule, the threat of enforcing a rule can itself be the First Amendment violation even before the speech happens.
Okay.
So there is a danger of overdoing it even on the aspirational aspect that would chill the exercise of the First Amendment right.
All right. And all these things probably, if we have this work session, should be laid out to you about what is and what is not. So, but I do think there's a distinction. I know that the public is really asking us to do something that we possibly can't do. And I always feel like a cop-out when I say that, but it's just the fact, you know. So elected officials are responsible to their constituents, pretty much, period. Okay.
They are.
I do understand. Grant,
And
I'm sorry.
I'm continually reminded of the phrase that the cure for unpopular speech is always more speech. It's not censorship.
Yeah.
Grant, I did have a quick question. So KSBA has an actual code of ethics that we're supposed to follow, and of course they train us on that. We're required by law to go to ethics training every year. And you know, other counties in Kentucky have code of conducts for board members. So when we did the work session, would that be something you could kind of help us navigate and stay away from anything that you think might be sticky, and then allow us to do, you know, just a code of conduct as a guide, and help us just avoid any sticky areas?
We'd be happy to.
I'm just going to bring in one pragmatic issue to this about when we have it. I would totally encourage, especially if it happens next year, that you apply for training credit on this session. I think it's going to be unethical. It should fit. So just keep that in mind, whoever's organizing it. There is some time. I would think it would definitely go towards that. And of course, it's not going to matter for Ambrose and I, but all right. I'm going to,
So we just have to find a date that's acceptable.
Mr. Hawkins, what's your recommendation on whether this board should do this or the new board should? I guess my thought is that board members were just elected for a 4-year term that are going to have to live with this
and understand everything he's going to tell us in the session. You know, it's going to be an educational thing too with Grant about what is acceptable, what is the First Amendment. I'm sorry to interrupt, but you know what I mean? So like they could really benefit just from the education of that session.
Given that there are 2 members that are rotating off, I think it could be done after the first of the year. If you wanted to do it sooner than that, then this board could invite the 2 newly elected board members to be a part of that, so that it could be done jointly. So I think you've got an option to do it either way.
I agree with that as well.
Well, I'm flexible. What do most people prefer? Do you prefer a December date or a January date? I guess is the question. We can just go ahead and set that date.
Ms. Edelin, I have a busy schedule through November and December. The 1st of January is typically a busy time for me, so it'll have to be mid to late January.
Okay.
Let's see. What would the meeting dates in January be? Perhaps we could just do it, you know, an hour and a half or 2 hours before a regular meeting, Angel. Do you know what those January dates would be?
We haven't set those yet.
We'll set them in December.
We'll set them in December for the.
Typically, we do the 2nd and 3rd.
It would typically would be the 3rd and 4th
You're going to have Martin
Mondays.
Luther King Day there, so one of them's going to be a Tuesday probably.
So one of them would more than likely be the 19th and the 25th.
Okay. The 19th or 25th, either one works for me. We could just come before a regular meeting. That way we don't have to make extra trips.
The 25th would be great for me, actually.
Okay.
Is that a Monday?
It is. Do you want to say 4:30, Allison, or 5? What do you think? 4?
5 o'clock on the 25th would be perfect.
Okay, so an hour, and then if we don't get done, we can just stay and do it after the meeting.
Yeah, that'll be fine.
Thank you.
All right, so that is agreeable to people who will be here on January 25th. Okay.
Is
that, we have this motion on the floor, we'll just, since we don't have anything to actually vote on, we'll just let that be brought up again.
Well, actually, I would like for us to go ahead and vote. So I would make a motion that we have a work session, that language that I used before. And
Ms.
you
Evelyn,
can
I
insert
have
the
some
date.
discussion as well.
Sure. Absolutely.
Remember,
I won't forget.
I can make a comment after that. I just want to address a couple of things. First of all, Ms. Springate addressed several of my check-ins and marked time points at those check-ins. For safety reasons, and obviously you don't want people to know when you are where you are, I never check in at a place when I'm there. So her time marks on those items were way off compared to what I was actually doing. Second of all, my reason for not wearing a mask is a personal reason. It's my business, the same as anyone else who chooses not to wear a mask. There are reasons that no one needs to explain to the public why they don't wear a mask, and there's no right that anyone has to question that. Third, I find her obsession with my Facebook post a little bit bothering. Trying to apply every Facebook post that I make to a specific situation could go on days and days and days. I'm very vocal on Facebook, but rarely do my Facebook posts ever apply to the same situation. And I'm pretty direct, so anytime I make a post, if it's specifically directed at a situation, I typically make that known. The one about our school lunches, I am disappointed in our school lunches. I think that the public has spoken out about that. I don't lay that blame on our cafeteria workers. I think they do an excellent job. Some of them are very personal friends of mine, and they're frustrated with what they have to give our children. And I think if we listen to our parents and see the posts that they've made on Facebook, they have made it very clear that the food that their kids are given is not exactly what they promised that they're going to be given. It's not acceptable for me, and if some people think it's acceptable, great. I'm fine with that. But there's a large majority of people who don't think it's acceptable. Another thing is, if people are offended by my colorful language on my personal Facebook, I accept that. That's who I am. I was the same person when my constituents elected me. I have not changed since that day. Unlike some political figures, when I was elected into office, I didn't change who I am. I understand that some people don't like that and they disagree with it. I have friends who don't, and they scroll past it. That's our right as individuals, and I appreciate people who, have differences of opinion from me. So, while it may not be for everyone, it's who I am. I haven't changed since the day I was elected, and I certainly don't intend to. I agree with Ms. Springate. If she wants to set this appointment or this date up for us to do this, I'm more than welcome, or I'm welcoming that idea. We can go ahead and do that. That's really just all I have to say about it. I'm not here to argue and yell and scream over Ms. Springate tonight, even though that's kind of where this is led. But I think that searching every single Facebook post that I make on Facebook and trying to apply it to a specific situation is really degrading to women. It's degrading to all of us. You could take that and put it in any situation and apply it to something. But I can tell you this, rest assured, when I check into a location, I promise you that's not where I am. I'm not trying to let everybody know where I am every single second of the day. A lot of times it's me supporting a local business. So, even if it's a joking, I have a great sense of humor if people got to know me, even if it's a joking kind of poking kind of situation when I check in, that's just what it is. You could take it and apply it to anything. That's your right, but I want to make sure that everybody's clear. When I check in at a place, I can promise you that's not where I'm at. So.
Well, Ms. Richardson,
thank you, Ms. Richardson.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say thank you.
I'm sorry, Ms. Springate.
I was just going to say thank you so much for agreeing to do the code of conduct training and helping us today. And I just want to be clear, I don't have Facebook. I don't really use Facebook. All the things that I referenced tonight were sent to me by your constituents, by Ambrose's constituents, by Danny's constituents, by Debbie's constituents, and by my constituents. And so I think that if we can sit down in an environment and talk about these things, maybe it can help allow everyone to see the harm that words can have on our students and on our district. And, you know, at this point, with everything that has been said and that is out there, you know, respectfully, I don't believe that you are able to represent the school district.
Yeah,
So that's,
Ms. Evelyn, I think that, any further comments on this from Ms. Springate are just gonna lead to another shouting match.
Okay,
I really don't care to hear any more of her opinion.
I think everyone has had their say. So item H, we are going to just pass over that for right now. It sounds like something that may come on the agenda again after January 25th when there's actually a document
well,
to
actually,
vote on.
yeah, actually, Debbie, I would like for us to go ahead and vote on my motion that the board adopt a code of conduct outlining expectations for board behavior, and that this meeting will be set and held publicly in an open work session on January the 25th. Was that the date we decided?
Sherry, I would ask that you amend your motion to be setting the meeting to adopt, or to craft and adopt.
That's what the motion is.
But
A motion that the board adopt a code of conduct outlining expectations for board behavior, and that meeting, that code of conduct be developed and created in full view of the public during an open work session on January the 25th at 5 p.m.
Okay, so you're not saying that this board should adopt the code of conduct that hasn't been written yet. You're just saying this board should adopt the resolution to set a meeting to do that, correct?
Exactly what I just read, yes. That be done on the 25th.
Yeah, we have nothing to vote on tonight. So we are not voting on. I understand her motion to be moved to hold a meeting on January 25th at 5 o'clock for the purpose of developing a code of conduct for the school board. Is that right?
Yes, in a public open meeting.
Right, and our work sessions are always public, so.
I'm hearing two different things on adopting a code of conduct that will be crafted versus setting a meeting to craft a code of conduct.
I guess my only question is, it appears that from the discussion that members are agreeable to adopting a code of conduct.
Yeah,
it will be crafted on, at least initiated on, in a meeting on the 25th of January, and then once that work is completed, the board would adopt that.
Correct.
Is the way I have understood the discussion.
So you're anticipating, Sherry, that they are committing to adopt one, no matter what it is, that's worked out on the 25th.
That's my question.
Well, you know, all I can say is I've read it a couple times. I'm not sure where the confusion is coming in.
Well, I guess, so just to clarify, and we really do need to move on past this,
Yeah,
but just to clarify, what I'm saying is, we're saying that a future board should craft this, but a current board should adopt the fact that the current board is going to adopt the thing that they craft. So you're adopting a policy that you've never seen.
No, we're adopting a date to develop a code of conduct. That date is January the 25th.
That's different.
So we are agreeing that we are going to adopt a code of conduct on January the 25th, or at least work on that in an open work session.
So if I made a motion, I'll move that the board will hold a meeting on January 25th, 2021 at 5 o'clock in the afternoon for the purpose of developing a code of conduct for the school board. You're not going to adopt it then. You'll probably adopt it later in the meeting. Right?
It would need a second meeting or second reading, wouldn't it?
It's not an actual policy.
Is that motion
no.
okay with you?
It's absolutely fine.
Okay.
So we're basically setting a date, is that correct?
We're setting a date of January 25th at 5 o'clock for the purpose of developing a board member code of conduct. And the meetings are always open, so I don't know.
Correct. They just want it to be an open work session
Right.
instead of something that one board member does individually and then everybody
But I
kind of
don't think we
fights
need to
over.
put that in there because that's automatic. If everyone's there, it will. Is there a second to that?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Allison, did you say something? Or who's talking?
Who made the motion? Did Debbie make the motion?
I made the motion.
Okay.
And Sherry made the second. I just changed the wording and made the motion. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Okay. I'm wondering if item I can go the same route. It is the board member social media policy.
Yes,
So do you want that the same meeting?
please.
Okay. So I will move that, well, probably should have just stuck it in the last motion, but I will move that the board will hold a meeting on work session on January 25th, 2021 at 5 o'clock, concurrent with the meeting to adopt a code of conduct. They will also adopt a social media, or develop a social media policy. It's kind of awkward, but is that okay with you, Grant? I think everybody knows. It's just.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there a discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Okay. Consideration of allowing virtual students to return to in-person learning. Ms. Richardson. Then we're on the next agenda item, item J, consideration of allowing virtual students to return to in-person learning.
Yes, what item, where did we add in, Danny's new agenda item? Is that at the beginning?
Well, I just kind of stuck it at the bottom. Should we move that up before we get to this one?
I guess we probably should, if you don't mind.
That's fine with
Do we
me.
have
Is there
to
any
amend-
objection?
Do we have to amend the agenda, Grant, or is that even possible
Well,
to do
we've
at this point?
amended it to add, it was actually Ambrose's.
I just think that adding that before, if we talk about that, I mean, it may save time and discussion.
Okay.
On what happens with
Yeah,
that.
I don't object, Allison. I just wanted to check with Grant. Grant, we amended the agenda at the beginning of the meeting to add Amber's item at the end of the agenda. And now we're almost at the end of the agenda and there was a desire to kind of swap out. Is that okay? Or should we just go with the agenda how it's set? I'm just asking a question.
To the extent this is a regular meeting, essentially the board can add another item if they find it necessary to clarify something, or they can go, as I understood from Ms. Bradley's motion, is that she felt what she was talking about adding would be adequately addressed within the discussion of what Mr. Wilson added. I don't know, is there another item that needs to be added beyond that discussion?
No, I think the issue is we've only added one item, and that was Mr. Wilson's, because Ms. Bradley, as you said, agreed that would be covered with what she was talking about. So that, would just be tacked on as item L. Do we have an issue that we just added that item to the end of the agenda to moving it up to item J and moving J and K down?
There's just been a request. Ms. Richardson has just requested to move that item before her item. And I just wanted to clarify, make sure that was okay. I don't object. I just want to check with you. We did the proposed amendments to the agenda at the beginning. We added Mr. Wilson's item at the end. We're now on the second to the last item. Can we swap those out? Oh, this is probably taking more time than just doing the discussion.
The order of items doesn't matter, regular meeting, special meeting, ever. You can take them in whatever order you want, so that part doesn't matter.
And thank you for reiterating that. I know that that's been considered unethical in the past, but I think we can always move them around. All right, so we will go to Mr. Wilson's motion first.
Ms. Edlin,
Yes, sir.
I make a motion pursuant to pursuant to KRS 158.160 subsection 2, to close schools in Woodford County to in-person instruction until November 30th, 2020, except as may be required by federal law for providing direct services to specified students. Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Wilson and a second by Ms. Bradley. Any discussion?
Ms. Edlin, over the past week, I've received comments and emails from both both classified and certified staff that they're concerned about continuing in-person classes during since our county has turned red. Pardon me, I'm sorry. Many other counties have taken this prudent action. That's a safety measure to protect our employees, our students, and the community. It was highly recommended by the governor in his address on Friday, his news conference on Friday, and I think it's the absolute right decision to make at this time.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I would like, so I didn't mean, Mr. Hawkins, to add something that you felt like already had been covered last week. I guess I was hoping that you might be able to give us an update on where the data stands right now. Like Mr. Wilson said, we have been reached out to by numerous staff that have concerns about the level of community spread both in our county and in the state. And as we go into the holiday season, just wanting to be as safe as we possibly can for all of our employees. If you could tell us a little bit about the decision impetus for moving the high school and middle school to virtual and leaving the elementaries in person, just so we're all on the same page.
Well, I'll take you back to Thursday evening, and we had been orange Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and we hit 25.1 on Thursday. And I think our belief in this is to look at one number on one day. It does not give you the total picture in terms of trying to make that decision. And so we met as a district administrative team. I had multiple conversations with Cassie Frazier at the health department based on our case numbers, both in school with students and staff. We were very comfortable in continuing for this current week. And again, that's looking at as much information as we possibly can in order to make that decision. Over the weekend, we received some information that we were going to be in a very difficult spot with a number of bus drivers. And so once again, we met, it was a virtual meeting, but we met Saturday morning for a couple of hours. Again, district administrative team along with two of our principals, and felt like it was best to continue with in-person at the elementary school and to move virtual with middle and high. And we felt like that was the best decision at that point in time. And so that's the decision, that's the direction that we took.
Mr. Hawkins, can I ask you, did you not know about the shortage of bus drivers on Friday?
I knew about it Friday evening. First got the call, and then we wanted to consider what options we might have. So we met again Saturday morning to see if there was a way to potentially stay in school with all students, K through 12. And based on that conversation, we determined that we needed to just stay with the elementary in person through this week.
Have the elementaries shown lower case rates, or just it was a numbers issue?
It was primarily a numbers issue. I think we also felt like it may not give as much time for parents to have to make adjustments in their schedules, as well as the elementaries having to switch to an all virtual. We felt like that might be a quick turnaround to try to do that on Monday. The high school had already been in that spot, and we felt like the middle school, based on how they had done the all virtual at the beginning of the year, it would be an easier transition for them. And we did have conversation, included Ms. Kirk in that conversation, and she agreed with that.
Okay. And have we sent out an employee survey measuring the comfort level for our staff for both certified and classified?
We have not, and part of that is that when we look at information on that Thursday, as I said, the numbers change daily. So it's very difficult to survey because if we had been 24.9, we're probably not having this conversation.
Sure, but
And so it's very difficult to do a survey every week when again numbers can change from one day to the next. And I think it's important to know, we are sitting at 28.7 right now. That is an average of about 7.5 cases per day out of nearly 27,000 residents in Woodford County. And so that is, I think that has to be factored in when you look at the incident rate, since it's based on 100,000. I think sometimes people think that we're averaging that number per day, and that's not what that truly means.
Well, and I think too, the other factor is that you have to look at the overall spread in the state and the surrounding areas, and the fact that we had 34 positive cases on Friday.
I don't think that was the number that was shared with me.
Ms. Eagle?
I did hear that too, but they had not gone through them yet to.
They expected some would be transferred
out
as
to
they
the
always
county,
are.
that was just
Yeah,
the
I mean,
gross
again, when I
positive
talked
not being
with-
adjusted.
And when I talked with Cassie, and we talked with her on a multiple times during the week, and I will say this: I was in several elementary schools on Thursday, and every teacher that I saw stopped me and said, "Please keep us in school next week." And so, when you say, "Are we listening to our staff?" We certainly try to, and and I think if they had felt otherwise, they could have shared that with me. They could have shared it with their building principal. If there was that level of concern. So again, our goal is always to try to make the best decision that we can make. There are so many factors that go into this decision, and so many people that it impacts. And so again, that's been our process. I feel very comfortable with our process and how we're going about that. And so I think we have done a remarkable job up to this point. And when you look at it, I think we've had right at 20 in-person student cases, positive cases up to this point, and 4 teacher cases. And we are in our 7th week of school.
Undoubtedly, our staff have done an amazing job with all the safety measures, and I know that I speak for all of the board when I say how profoundly grateful we are to everyone from first contact in the morning until our kids are done in the evening after checking in and sending emails and everything else. That for sure is not in doubt. One question I got today that I thought was interesting, and I do think the other thing that we have to consider is when you share a viewpoint publicly, it makes it less likely that people are going to come up and tell you something if they know that's not how you feel. And I know that I'm not the only board member receiving correspondence from our teachers. I can see that they're copied to multiple people. And I just want to make sure that we are advocating, and I know that's also your goal, for them in every way and making sure that we're doing things as safely as we possibly can.
And I think we have, and one thing that I think it's important to point out when we talk about the community spread, I think us being in school actually does more to reduce the spread in our community. we know if we are all in school, we have about 3,200 in our community that we know are in mask, that they are distancing as much as they possibly can, that they are using hand sanitizer and washing their hands and following our safety protocols. When we are not in school, we have no control. And so I do think having that number of students and adults, I think is actually something that is very positive in terms of reducing the spread. And you have to look no further than schools, districts across the state that have been virtual the entire time, and their numbers have far exceeded ours. And so I don't think there is any data to support that schools are spreaders, at least not what I've seen so far from a state level and a national level. But again, if the board certainly has the right to close school, and if they choose to do that, we will certainly communicate that out, and we will make the best of it.
And I know, to that point, Mr. Hawkins, I had taken note of a quote from Governor Beshear that said, I don't think that schools are causing the spread of the virus, but they can't stop it in red counties, and unfortunately, they can amplify it. Also, think about the teachers, principals, everybody else in a red county where you know people in schools have it, and you're putting them in direct contact at a time when you know the probability is really high that they are going to be exposed to the virus. So to those that you are still sending those employees back, look your people in the eye and tell them that you care about them, and then do the right thing. That's where my angst and heartache comes. And
I will say that I hope it's not to imply that we don't care about our people.
I didn't understand that last comment.
He didn't want that to imply that they don't care about the people.
And I will say this, and I have been fairly vocal with this. If there is that strong a sentiment from the administration that schools need to close when we turn red, then mandate it. Tell us all to close. But they have... No, I'm talking about... Or take some other actions. Because right now, the only group that is asked to do anything differently when a county turns red is the school district. That's it. And I'm sorry, but that penalizes kids.
Has the highest population of people in a building at a time when it turns red. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm trying to think back, but did we not say in a meeting a few months ago that when we were trying to figure out if we were going to close or open, if we were going to set like some kind of standard, did we not say that if a county went red, I think I remember Mr. Hawkins saying that if a county went red, we would close our schools. Is that anyone else?
I did not say that. I said that would be a time to have discussion with the health department and make that decision based on our local data.
Do any of the other board members remember that? Or am I'm not saying that I specifically, but I think that's what we said. Am I correct? Or?
I remember.
No, I recall that the majority of us said it was our intent if we went red that we would suspend in-person instruction. That's what I recall, Ms. Richardson.
And I think what I recall as well, but I just wanted to make sure that I didn't misread that.
Just to clarify.
If I could ask the superintendent a follow-up question, you said I've been fairly vocal about my views. Can you give me some examples of where you were vocal about your views on the governor's stance?
That doesn't really.
I'm sorry, Mr. Hawkins, just a second. It's hard when some are virtual and some are in person. I think Ms. Bradley was trying to say something along what you two were talking about. So can we go there first and then we'll hear your question, Ms. Wilson.
In answer to Ms. Richardson's question, I think what we discussed was that we would use the metric as part of a framework to make the decision. And I did ask a clarifying question, and that was, can you foresee a situation that all of the cases, or that a large amount of the cases within the county weren't located in one specific building, and we were read that we would stay open? And I believe the answer was no, that if we were read and that it was widespread and not located within one building or institution, that was not something we foresaw.
I don't recall that, because I think I was very adamant about ensuring that I would have the flexibility to work with the health department in that situation. I gave that as an example, but I don't recall saying that it would be an automatic decision, because again, that's one number on one day, and I think that is I don't know that is all of the information that should be driving a decision.
And that's my recollection too. I know we had a long discussion about if it was mandatory or if it was just a suggestion. And at this point, I think KSBA was clear in the training that I went to that very week that it was a recommendation or suggestion, that it was not in fact mandated. And I think the governor's made clear subsequently every day that it's a recommendation, and that the control really is local. And so I understand that KRS 158.160 subsection 2 gives the board the right to make that decision. I totally understand that and have no issue with that. My question is, what happens if we are orange on Thursday, but we were red on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then we're red on Friday and Saturday, but on Thursday we're orange? Would we open back up? Or what happens if, this week, on this Thursday, we're yellow or orange, we're not red? Would we still be closed? And then I guess I have a lot of concerns about the day-to-day decisions. It sounds like Mr. Hawkins is meeting after hours and on weekends and having almost daily contact with school officials, transportation folks, health department folks, really everyone that's kind of involved. And I guess I'm a little concerned that as a board, we wouldn't really have that same level of involvement or access to that information and data as in real time. And so that's a little bit concerning to me. Does that concern anyone else?
I'm sorry, Sharon. Let me, I kind of stopped Ambrose. Okay, Ambrose, you had a question. I stopped you because Danny was trying to interject on the previous point.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Miss Bradley quoted the governor, and the superintendent said, I've been rather vocal about this, and then he went on to say if the governor wants us to close, he should mandate it. And my question was, I've never heard the superintendent vocalize his feelings about that, and I asked him, where has he vocalized those feelings, since he said he's been fairly vocal about it?
I shared my concerns with the Commissioner of Education.
Have you shared it with any of your staff?
Yes.
That you disagree with the governor?
Yes.
What did you share with them?
The exact same thing I said this evening.
Will you repeat that, because I couldn't hear all of it.
I don't think one number on one day should drive the decision, first and foremost. And second, I do feel like schools are taking the brunt of this when no other groups are being really asked to do things differently if a county goes red. So that's the information that I've shared.
I'm very, very glad that our numbers are low in school. I feel extremely bad that we've had 24, I think you said, cases. But I think it is prudent. I think it's undeniable that cases of COVID-19 are increasing in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. We set a record last week, had 1,500 more today. We're having a natural break for Thanksgiving next Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I think it would be prudent to to suspend in-service instruction until after Thanksgiving, the Monday after Thanksgiving, to protect even further, to ensure that those numbers stay low. I don't think that we should go to school until the numbers are high. I think we need to be prudent and protect our staff and our students and our community. Thank you.
Mr. Wilson, are you suggesting that we suspend all, including elementary, starting immediately?
Yeah, that was my motion. We're not going to middle school, high school, the rest of the week. And I don't know what the bus driver situation is. I've never seen anything in a written communication. I didn't hear anything tonight, so I can't address that because I know nothing about it. But yes, that would be my hope.
I guess I just had a question. I thought the motion, it sounds like you're making two different motions now. The first motion I heard you say was about closing school, all school until November the 30th. And now it sounds like you're saying something a little bit.
I'm not, do you want me to repeat the motion, Ms. Springate?
Yes, please. I'm sorry. I didn't hear the part about closing immediately until just now, so I missed that.
I make a motion pursuant to KRS 158.160 subsection 2 to close schools to in-person instruction until November 30th, 2020, except as may be required by federal law for providing direct services to specified students.
Thank you.
And can I ask, I need to ask a question as well. Does that also mean staff staying home, or does that require staff to still come to the building?
Where does that stand right now?
This week, we have been asking middle school and high school teachers to report to the building.
So, Mr. Wilson, would you also add to that that staff stay home as well, or that they still report to the building?
That might be a great question, or Mr. Hawkins can clarify. I'm not sure that that's within our purview.
Can you weigh in, Grant?
Or Mr. Hawkins may know.
Go ahead and let Grant.
Yeah, my only concern with that, I don't know how, as far as the capacity of teachers to all provide remote instruction from home, I think that has to be not as cut and dry as just a blanket mandating that they all stay and instruct from their homes. I don't know the practicalities of it, so part of that just needs to be Superintendent and Mr. Wells, I think, would have to address that.
Thank you, Grant.
Okay. Anyone else? I have one question, but we can all, it's not over when I ask a question, but I think Mr. Wilson touched on this. So this week we switched in person for the middle school and the high school, mainly because of the bus driver situation. What makes you think that will be different next Monday and Tuesday?
We haven't made a decision about next Monday and Tuesday. That would typically come later in the week. That is something that we have discussed, is not being in school next Monday or Tuesday. But that would be, again, a decision that would be made a little bit later.
Without knowing the details, as Mr. Wilson alluded to, exactly what the issue was with the bus drivers, do you anticipate that those same situations that caused the absences this week will continue next week?
That I don't know, because some of it will depend
on.
on.
Related to their age or?
Well, I don't think we can really get into that in a public meeting.
But were they situations that you think may change by next month?
I
don't know that for certain.
Okay.
Ms. Evelyn, I'd
Yes.
just like to say that I know that a lot of the frustration that I've heard from constituents on this is lack of timing for planning. And I know when we're talking about elementary age students, parents have to be able to adjust their schedules or line up babysitting, have someone stay home with their children. So, we're talking about 2 days next week before a break. I think that it would be a disservice to our community, to our constituents and the parents, to not make a decision tonight so that they have adequate time to plan. sending out a one call on a Sunday afternoon that their children are going to be staying home for the next 2 days isn't just, it's not just ill planning. It sends people into a situation where they have to make dire decisions whether they go to work or whether they stay home, if they can find someone to take care of their children, if they can't. This affects people more than just saying, well, you know, I can't go to work today. It could be a parent's decision whether they stay home with their kids and lose their job or they go to work and they leave their kids at home. So waiting to make a decision for just 2 days, to me, seems a little bit reckless. It seems selfish. It seems like you're ruling for a hierarchy. I think that we need to make a decision tonight to let our parents know what they need to do next week. We know that our county is in the red. Let's just make a decision this evening for our kids to either go or be out next week. And that way parents have plenty of time to make a solid plan for their family. Hopefully when we go back, if we can go back on the 30th, if we decide tonight that they don't go back next week, we go back on the 30th, it gives everybody time to get healed, and it gives everyone a time to social distance, whatever they need to do, get tested, and then we can start over after that. But to wait until Saturday or late Sunday is just completely ridiculous in my opinion.
And we have not waited until Sunday on any decision, Ms. Richardson. We have made.
I think you did last week.
No, we did not.
It was Saturday or Sunday.
It was Saturday afternoon because we got new information Friday evening that we needed to have conversation about. And again, that went into our decision making as it related to our elementary students. For the past 2 weeks, we have either made the decision on Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening, or first thing Friday morning. That's what we've done the last 2 weeks. Circumstances changed where we had to make an adjustment, and we did make that call Saturday afternoon as soon as that decision was made. That communication went out at noon on Saturday.
And then just to clarify, Debbie, I think the motion on the floor tonight, what it would do is it would have every parent of every kindergartner, first grader through 12th grader, not having their child in school tomorrow. So it's not that we gave them notice on a Thursday for a Monday or even a Saturday for a Monday. We're literally giving them notice tonight that tomorrow find something else to do with your children. It is 8:08 right now, and so this would take effect in the morning. So I think that I just want to clarify that just so that we're all on the same page and aware of what this means.
I don't disagree with you on that. I think that is extremely unfortunate. And, I hope our kids can go to school. But definitely, if we are going to shut down school, I hope that we can tell our constituents, the parents, as soon as we know, not hours later, any days later. I think that they need to know as soon as possible. So I don't disagree with your statement at all.
Yeah. And just to be perfectly clear, that means that at 8:08 or 8:09, 8:10, whenever we make this decision, that tomorrow parents are going to have to figure something else out if this motion passes. I just want to be real clear.
I think
because I don't disagree with you either, Ms. Richardson. I just want to be real clear about all of us so that we all understand what this decision means.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I would agree with that. I think we need time to plan. I guess, Mr. Hawkins, what is your comfort level with switching to virtual instruction next week so that there is that extended break? I would rather that this be a group decision and work through these things together than for it to be a mandate by one party or the other. And I do agree that making this decision tonight for school in the morning is not a good idea.
And I agree with Sherry that we would probably need to amend the motion.
But I do wonder what your thought is on extending that break a little bit and making that virtual. And I think that your thoughts and feelings are correct on schools bearing the brunt of this a bit in Kentucky. But I also think that those same mask numbers of thousands of kids wearing a mask, that brunt is being felt by our teachers, and that's hard too. And I know that you're aware that they're tired and, stressed. Is there a chance that we could extend the virtual instruction?
I mean, that was a conversation we've already had. We just had not made a final decision yet.
What were your thoughts on that?
Again, I think we were going to look at to see if we improve through the course of the week or not. But again, I'm perfectly fine if the board wants to vote to not be in school next Monday or Tuesday. We could certainly do that. We have no issue with that. I would have grave concerns about telling elementary parents tonight that we're not going to be in school tomorrow.
No, we don't want any children to be without childcare. That is not a thing.
I think Ms. Richardson said that was reckless.
Yeah. Can I ask a quick question to clarify?
Let's let Danny finish. I'm not sure she's done.
I absolutely said it would be reckless. Yes, yes, you're correct.
Did you have something else, Danny?
My only thought is your threshold there on Monday and Tuesday, you think it would be best to just keep it there, or is it Friday to get that weekend of extra time to try and slow the progress on this? I'm asking honestly.
I don't understand your question.
Is switching to virtual on Friday a good idea, or should it just...
I think the more we can be in person, the better off we're going to be. So I don't know that a Friday virtual would really make a huge difference.
My thought was just...
I mean, they're already going to have from Saturday to the following Sunday if we're out on Monday and Tuesday. So that's a significant amount of time. I think it would be good if we could stay in school through the week.
Mr. Wilson, would you want to amend your motion?
No.
Fair enough.
Ms. Evelyn, I would call for a vote on my motion, please.
Okay. We have a motion to go to go to virtual learning for all students immediately. Is that correct? Beginning tomorrow.
Yes, and I would call for a roll call vote, please.
Who would need, as outlined in this motion, that by federal law would need specific targeted services. Ms. Bradley.
Nay.
Ms.
Only
Green.
because I can't justify them having that short of notice for tomorrow.
Ms. Springate.
Ms. Evelyn, I need to ask a question first.
Okay.
Before we vote.
Yes, ma'am.
If in the event that we don't vote to close school immediately tomorrow, are we going to then make a motion to extend the break next week?
Yes, I believe we can do that, right, Grant?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. If somebody wants to make that motion, it would be allowable. Okay. Anything else before we continue the vote?
I apologize for interrupting.
No. Everybody needs to have their questions answered. Ms. Brindley.
No.
Ms. Richardson.
Nay.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
The chair votes nay. The motion fails 1-4. All right. Does anybody else want to make another motion?
Yes. I think.
Okay.
And again, let me just ask, it wasn't so much my thought that Friday would make a marked difference. It was the 3 continuous days in a row. And I was wondering if, in your opinion, having from Monday to Thursday for teachers to plan for that virtual instruction, if that was adequate to try and allow for things to calm down and have, not so condensed populations prior to the holiday.
I still think we would be fine to go through Friday. You would have 5 days before the actual holiday of Thanksgiving for things to slow down, calm down. So I would suggest staying through Friday with in-person at the elementary.
And just to clarify, the high school and middle school are virtual.
For the week.
For the whole week. And so basically all we're talking about at this point is the elementary.
Now,
They have been
the
in
high school and virtual, they're in person for 2 days next week, right?
Well, they could be, or the superintendent could get the numbers on Thursday and decide that they would be virtual. I mean, how we've done it up till now is we've allowed the superintendent to look at the numbers with the health department, to talk with them on a daily basis, to talk with staff on a daily basis. And because he's close to the situation and has the information and knows the numbers and knows the data and talks with the people on a daily basis, obviously he has that real-time kind of information. I did have a question a while ago. I forgot when Danny was speaking, and then it just kind of got confused. I just don't have the calendar in front of me. So for next week, for the holiday week, are the students out on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or are they only out on Monday?
The current calendar has,
3 days
has students out Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we didn't have a motion for Monday, Tuesday, and all of a sudden Wednesday everybody has to go to school. Thank you.
Do we have a motion?
I would move that we adopt Mr. Hawkins' recommendation to switch to all virtual instruction next week, Monday, the
23rd.
Thank you, 23rd through November 30th.
Not through November 30th.
Well,
Well,
it would be
to
the
return.
23rd.
Sure, yeah.
They would come back. Yes.
Are you okay with that one, Angel?
I will second that motion.
I just had a quick discussion.
Sure.
In listening to the conversation, I wasn't sure that Mr. Hawkins, it's fair to say that that was your recommendation.
If we're going to close, if we're going to go ahead and make a decision to close, that would be my recommendation, is to stay through this week. And
Do virtual.
I guess I was kind of thinking that there was going to be a vote to close.
Gotcha.
So if we're going to do that, that would be my recommendation, if we're going to have a vote to close.
Would you, but is it your
Tuesday.
first preference, or is your first preference to wait till Thursday?
I mean, my first preference would be to wait, look at our data, and make a decision based on how we've done it up to this point. But I also understand that if the board would rather go ahead and make that decision this evening, that's fine. I'm perfectly fine with that, and it would give people a couple more days, and so I think that's fine.
And I think it's a good balance of all of us working together to try and do the right thing for everybody.
And that will actually give the high school and middle school teachers 2 full weeks away from the students.
And understanding, Mr. Hawkins, that
Just the high school.
Oh, okay, in the middle school then a week and a couple of days.
that it may not be possible, but I would just ask that if it is possible to allow people to teach remotely, that we offer that as much as we possibly can, especially next week, to avoid having people all in the same area and kind of defeating the purpose of having switched to virtual.
And I will say, I've heard from teachers and also a couple of parents that just having those 2 days off will give them a few more days away from people, that perhaps they'll feel more comfortable being with their family than if they were with a bunch of people on Tuesday. So that's another little benefit to that. So is there any further discussion on this motion to go to in-person learning for all schools? All virtual. All virtual, thank you. On Monday, November 23rd, and Tuesday, November 24th. There's no further discussion. We'll call the vote. Ms. Bradley?
Aye.
Ms. Springate?
Aye.
Ms. Richardson?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
The chair votes yes. The motion passes 5-0. So we can get that information out to people and they can plan accordingly. All right. Okay, Ms. Richardson, we did this. Do you still want to talk about allowing virtual students to return to in-person learning? We had put this ahead. You weren't sure how the outcome of this might effectuate how you wanted to move forward on the next thing.
Yeah, is it okay for me in this situation to talk about our virtual students returning in person after the 30th?
Yes, that's the agenda item. If you have a motion and or just if you want to explain it, that's fine. We kind of go ahead. It is on the agenda.
Do I need to make a motion for them to return?
Probably, although even, but that's your, why don't you go ahead and do that first? That you would be the movement to allow virtual students to return to in-person.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion for virtual students to return, with the in-person, online students after the November 30th or on the November 30th, return date.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Richardson and a second by Mr. Wilson. Any discussion?
I have discussion.
Go ahead.
Well, I'd like to just start by saying that over the last few weeks, I've spoken with several students. The specific students that I'm talking about are high school students. I've had two students that I've spoken with. Two that really stood out to me. One, a student who was on virtual. His parents chose for him to do the virtual learning. I understand that people say, you know, you made this decision, you have to stick with it. This isn't, you don't get to make a decision and go back on it. I don't think that we're in a time where we can just say, you know, hey, this isn't like everybody doesn't get a trophy, yada, yada, yada. We are dealing with students who are suffering with serious issues, being isolated at home. One student, for instance, that I spoke with, just in general conversation, asking the student how they were doing, informed me that they had contemplated suicide since they've been home by themselves. They were talking to a friend who just, you know, on Snapchat back and forth talking, and they told their friend that after being home, being isolated a couple of times from being on a sports team, that they were thinking about killing themselves. And luckily, fortunately for that student, their friend had the gall, had the nerve, had the presence of mind to call the local authorities and let them know. And authorities visited the home and spoke with this student about suicide and about how being at home by themselves, being isolated on ingenuity or edgenuity has affected them and possibly saved the life of one of our students. You know, I hugged this student, told him that I loved him and how much it would affect our community, how much it would affect their friends if they decided to do this and actually took part and followed through with their worries and their concerns and their efforts to give up on life. I can't really explain to you all how I felt. I've known this kid for several years. It's a friend of my child, and you know, I asked my child, have you heard about this? Have they talked about this with you? And the answer was no. Thank God that this child reached out to a friend and let them know, you know, what they were going through, just being by themselves. Another kid that I spoke to, they're on virtual learning as well, a junior in high school, and I asked this child how they were doing, how they were functioning through virtual learning. And this child's reply to me was, I dropped out. Let that sink in. This child had 1.5 years of school left, and they dropped out of school. They're no longer a student at Woodford County Schools. They've decided to apply for a job at a horse farm. They've given up on their education. I mean, you can say anything you want to say about my social media posts, but when I talk to these kids personally and they tell me what they're doing, that's real life. I mean, that's devastating to me to look at this child in the face and hear them say they gave up and they walked away from school. I don't know what their parents said about it. I know that they're not, you know, encouraging them because obviously they've let them quit. That's 2 kids in 1 week that just myself, just me. I'm the only one out of this whole entire community who has talked to those 2 kids. Imagine the situation, the conversations, the outcry that we've had from multiple students all over the county who have been sitting at home all day long on their computers, watching videos and answering questions with no social contact, who have given up and walked away. or who have thought about suicide. I've talked to another parent who is concerned about their child who is injuring themselves. And I've heard people say, oh, well, we know too much about these students, we know too much. You don't know who they are. The community doesn't know who they are, and I'll never tell the community who they are. But the one child who was hurting themselves, they got back in school. After reaching out to me, and I spoke with Mr. Hawkins, and as far as I know, from following up, this child is back in school. There are so many kids. I'm not saying that some of our children don't thrive well on Edgenuity and do okay at home, but there are kids who are suffering and suffering tremendously, and we don't see them. We don't hear from them. To say that we're not going to let these kids back in school because their parents picked virtual and that's just how it is and you have to get over it, but then to say the safest place for our kids to be is in our schools because we're making them mask and we're making sure they wash their hands and we're making sure that they social distance properly. It doesn't make sense to me to say it's okay for this group, but it isn't okay for this group. We are responsible for making sure that when they're in that building, they're doing everything they can to be safe. We can't make sure they're being safe on the outside. We can't make sure that they're not contemplating suicide. We can't make sure that they're not turning to drugs or alcohol or that they're not getting fed. I think it is imperative for our kids, the ones who want to, because not all of our virtual students will return to school. Some of them, their parents are fine with them staying home and they're thriving at school. But a lot of them aren't. And for us to deny them access to their teachers, their friends, the structure, the meals, their education is wrong. And that's something that I lose sleep over every single night. I think about these kids. I've held them in my arms. I've cried for them. I think we need to take a serious look at those kids who need to be back in our building and not just create some random reason, oh, you have to come up with a reason. You have to go to a therapist. You have to do this. You have to do that. If they want to be back in our schools, they need to be back in our building with our teachers in that facility, learning and not falling behind.
Thank you, Ms. Richardson. Is there any?
Thank you, Ms. Richardson.
Is there any further discussion?
I would just say, because this is going to come to a vote presumably, that I am certainly not indifferent to the suffering of any of those kids. And I applaud you for reaching out to them and for your efforts to support them. And I am fine with this showing up on the agenda every time because we don't need to lose sight of any student. But I do want to just revisit the fact that Grant has told us that this decision doesn't fall in the board's scope. And I don't want to seem uncaring or unkind when voting to not make this change right now. And, to accepting Mr. Hawkins' decision that they need to stay virtual until the semester break. And I hope that all of them can see the light at the end of the tunnel, that they can see that they're going to get to come back in person, God willing, and the cases allow for that. I worry that as a county and as a country that going into our regular flu season and a season that already sees higher sicknesses and illnesses, and doing that with a pandemic, everything's going to look different this year.
I just had a quick question for Mr. Hawkins. Mr. Hawkins, do you mind just kind of giving us an update, one, and number two, kind of reviewing some of the reasons why to bring back virtual students in the middle of their semester and then the middle of the semester at the high school, because they're two different kinds of academies. Could you just kind of go over that a little bit and refresh our memory?
Yeah, I think just a couple of things to point out. Logistically, it would be impossible for us to be able to accommodate additional students starting on November 30th. I think number two, for students to try to transition from being in a virtual platform at this point in time, coming back to in-person would be next to impossible because there's only 3 weeks left in the semester. From a staffing standpoint, don't think that we could staff it and still keep our numbers very manageable in classrooms that allows us to follow our procedures and our protocols.
Mr. Hawkins, how do you plan to accommodate those students in January, 4 weeks later?
Well, right now, since we are just got our numbers, we are finalizing those. We are meeting with our principals tomorrow, and we will begin developing a plan. So it would not be uncommon for us to come back probably at the December board meeting to say that we're going to need some additional staff. And then we would have time to be able to put that in place, because that would be nearly a month for us to be able to work through that. So,
could you not have been working on that additional staff since we started talking about letting our virtual students come back a month ago or 2 months ago?
Without knowing what the numbers are, Ms. Richardson, no, we cannot.
You don't know how many students are enrolled in Woodford County Public Schools?
We don't.
I'm confused. How can you not know?
I do know that. What I didn't know was how many were planning on returning.
How many
You
are
don't know
there?
that.
Madam Chairperson,
We have a little over 200 students who have asked to return at Woodford County High School. There's no way right now that we could accommodate 200 more students in this building a week from this coming Monday. Not without appropriate staff. I'm almost finished, Mr. Wilson. In that, the first thing that we would look at is to see, do we have any virtual teachers who would like to return to in-person? To see how then that accommodates, because we're going to have to redo some schedules. And then make a determination at that point, how many, if any, new teachers would we need? What subject areas would we need? Do we need elective teachers? Do we need content teachers? To be able to try to hire high school teachers in October or November is not necessarily feasible, but we can begin planning for some December grads to hopefully fill those positions if they are needed. But it takes a significant amount of planning to be able to accommodate students who may be returning to a building.
And then just to
do we
clarify.
have in-person classrooms right now at the high school with a virtual teacher, where the students are in the classroom and a TV or a monitor is rolled into the room and the teacher is virtual but the classroom is in person?
We have a couple of those. Those are primarily for some dual credit courses. Potentially some AP.
Are those classes successful right now?
As far as I know, they are. Mr. Howell, would you like to talk a little bit about that? You may want to come up.
Yeah, to answer the question, we do have a few blended learning classes, if you will, where we have in-person students being taught by our virtual teachers.
I'm sorry. Who's speaking right now? I apologize. I can't see you.
It's the
Morgan
principal.
Okay, thank you.
So the only thing different, or I guess in addition to what Mr. Hawkins says, we do have an engineering class outside of some of the ones that you mentioned.
How many kids are virtual in the high school right now?
Approximately 530.
And only 200 of those 530 have indicated they want to come back to in-person.
Correct.
It's a little over 200.
Okay.
We are still working to finalize all the numbers. We're going to double check lists.
I think we learned, and we've always known, some parents are more sophisticated than others. Some are paying more attention. And I did hear stories about that, with those kids who maybe weren't quite as savvy to say, go ahead and enroll in person. You can always go back out, but you can't come in. I really worry about that happening again. I mean, what have we done to advertise this? what have we done to maybe reach out to those parents that we know may not be quite as engaged and are just not, either they're gonna miss the deadline again.
No,
and they're gonna
nobody
be the
missed,
same.
if anybody who missed the deadline, we reached out to a second time.
Okay, so
So-
they had to answer yes or no. Like, they had to give an answer,
That
we're
is
staying
correct.
virtual or we're staying in
That
person.
is
Okay,
correct.
so you're aware, you're clear you've heard from everybody or you reached out to them.
We did at least twice because
Okay.
we sent the survey and then we did follow-ups.
I mean, yeah, and just, sorry to cut you off, but then we, Mrs. Forkey sent out an email to anybody who did not respond. And in addition to that, we had front office staff actually making personal
Okay.
phone calls.
Great, because I do think that was we don't want the kids to pay for some of that, so. Okay, great. And the same thing with the middle school then, I guess?
Yes,
Is it about the same rate of return,
it's a little bit less at middle school.
like percentage wise, or no?
I don't have a,
Oh, I just didn't know if it was kind of a holding number.
So in the high school, we're gonna have 200 more students. Think we may need more teachers or could bring some of our virtual back to in-person or like
a
Allison
combination.
pointed out, maybe they'll teach virtually, but the kids will be in the building. Do we have the rooms for those kids? Because it's teachers, and the reason we need more teachers is because the classes are gonna be smaller, which means we're gonna need more rooms.
We do have rooms because some of the teachers who are teaching virtually are not here. So we do have.
So we do
class-
have room to accommodate 200 more students.
We have classrooms. Right now, we wouldn't have teachers.
But we do have the space. Okay.
Yes.
And then I did have a follow-up question, just to clarify, the difference between returning right now and returning in January, how does that scheduling work at the high school? Can you just speak to that about if, the classes and, if they're gonna have different classes in January that they have now, and so then you're doing all new scheduling for everybody versus just moving them over the last maybe 2 or 3 weeks of a class and expecting them to do a whole semester's worth of work? Just, can you just clarify that, please?
And I missed the first part of your question, sorry.
That's okay, it was just that, basically.
That's the question. Will they have all new classes in the?
Yes, the answer is yes, they'll be all new classes starting second semester.
So scheduling wise and credit wise, the semester will begin again in January. And so they'll have all new classes and all new schedules and all new teachers. And so to be able to kind of fit everybody in and do schedules for everybody in January would be, it sounds like a little bit easier than trying to bring 200 kids back on the 30th and try to find spots for them in existing classes. So that, say if they have English and they need that to graduate, say freshman English, and you couldn't find a freshman English spot, then they maybe wouldn't get credit, and they certainly wouldn't be at the same place, that kind of thing.
And then one of the big issues in addition to the ones that you mentioned are, again, what is offered in Edgenuity is not always what we offer in person. Likewise, we have classes in person that isn't necessarily offered via Edgenuity. So, what do you do in that case where, when you come across those situations as these students come back, in November 30th, for example, and that class doesn't translate to something that we have here in person?
It sounds like, I think we all realize it was very complicated, but it sounds like students could actually not be able to earn credits and graduate on time if you're kind of shifting back and forth the last couple of weeks of a semester. So I just wanted to clarify, make sure I understood that. Thank you.
So I would just like to clarify that in essence, we've done a huge disservice to the virtual students by leaving them kind of out on their own, not making a way for them to be able to transition back in, when in fact we have transitioned some kids back in who have either been put on a 504 plan or some kind of special treatment. We've made a way for them to come back in, but then we have this group of kids that we have out here who could be suffering, who hasn't spoken out, who haven't reached out to someone. We're not going to make a way for them to come back just because they haven't done the right thing or whatever. I think that it's been basically admitted, even by Jeff here tonight, that we've done a huge disservice to our virtual learning students by not keeping them up to par with what's going on in the school, not allowing them a situation where they could transition back into the school and be able to be in person to, number one, save a life, feed a meal, get social interaction. We've done a huge disservice to those children. And now they are going to be left to wait until January 1st or January 5th, whatever date it is that they go back, to be able to come back into the school. We're also not willing to do the work that it takes to get them back into class if they need to come back. And parents or students, some of these students don't have a parent that will reach out to get them back into school. They're left there to sit by themselves, and we're just, oh well, I mean, we can't help it because we can't get them back in school because they're going to fall behind or they're not going to get their credit. It's our job to make sure that they can come back into school at any point in time, receive the education that they need, catch up the way they need to be caught up, make sure that they're healthy, make sure that they're vibrant, they're thriving in our society, they're not contemplating suicide. I don't see an excuse here that's acceptable. If you guys do, that's fine, but I don't see an excuse that is acceptable in that instance. I just don't.
Okay, I appreciate your opinion.
Okay, but we have a responsibility to these children, and we are failing them.
I'll let Mr. Howe talk a little bit about what all they're doing to help the virtual students. One thing I will say, when Ms. Forgy has to make wake-up calls to students, that's a parent issue. That's not a school issue. And I know that they have worked extremely hard throughout the entire semester to keep these students engaged, to work with these students. And so, Ms. Trout, if you want to talk a little bit about some of the things that you guys are doing.
That's not true. That is, I need to speak up. That is not true. I have a virtual student.
No, I didn't say your student.
My student hears from a human being once a week. Once. He's not a problem child. He's not having issues with suicide or anything like that, but he hears from a human being from Woodford County Schools one time a week to tell him, you need to do this, you need to do that. He doesn't get online during the day and see a human being on the other side of the computer. He doesn't. That's edgenuity. Edgenuity is getting up in the morning, looking at your computer, sitting there for hours and hours and hours, listening to a video and answering questions. That's edgenuity. So if you have to make wake-up calls, I can't help that. If kids don't come to school 3 days in a row, the school calls their parents and says, why isn't your kid at school? I'm sorry, that's our job. Edgenuity is failing our students.
Yeah.
Madam Chairman.
Mr. Howe.
No, I was just going to highlight it. We have, the virtual academy teachers, and I'm not going to argue that there's not limitations, whether it be in person or virtual. There is no perfect solution, no matter what that looks like. But the teachers have done a fantastic job, and I just want to highlight that we ran a contact report. So what we've been doing is we've been asking teachers to put in a section in Infinite Campus, it's called PLP, anytime that they've reached out on Google Meets, phone calls, emails. There were 6,589 contacts to 496 students as of the other day. That's an average of 13 contacts per student between email, telephone, and Google Meet. In addition to all the things they're doing with regards to grading the assignments in Edgenuity, with reaching them with tutoring services, we have the Hop On for Help, which is Mrs. Forgy and the group of teachers here have worked out to where we have teachers on their planning that are offering tutoring. Then we have our after-school services as well, the Homework Club, which is offered Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. Dr. Surgeon has been running that along with the help of a bunch of teachers here, and have extended that hand as well to virtual academy students. Again, I'm not going to argue that anything's perfect, but I think that the amount of contacts, just that data point alone, I think speaks for itself. 6,589 contacts, between all the tutoring services that we're offering, in addition to even small things like Mrs. Forkey literally calling a handful of students, and Mr. Hawkins is not exaggerating here, to give them a wake-up calls. We're reaching out, we're doing what we can.
And I honestly, I'm not blaming this on the staff. I don't want that to come across as like I'm saying the staff isn't doing their job, that they're not reaching out doing the best they can. What I'm saying is the kids who need to be in the building need to be in the building. There's no cut and dry with that. I understand that. I think our staff is overloaded. They're trying to do virtual. They're trying to do in person. They're running back and forth. They're going crazy trying to figure out what they're supposed to do and how to do it the best. But every single parent in this county is a taxpayer. Every single student deserves the same exact education as every other student. And we're not giving our students that. We're not giving our students the opportunity for that. And saying that, if we have 500 students at the high school who are virtual right now, and 200 and something of them want to come back, I don't understand why we cannot work. If we can make wake-up calls and we can make 6,000 something phone calls to students, whatever, why can't we figure out a way to get those 200 students who desperately need to be back in person learning, having that education, having that person-on-person education, why we cannot figure that out? Why we're not working overtime to make sure that that's figured out? Because that's what public schools and what our taxpayers are paying for. They're paying for our kids' education. Public education is the most important education I think you can get. And I think that denying any child that public education and public education is a disservice to our children.
So, Mr. Howe, if you made 6,500 calls to 500 students, that's about 13
Yes.
contacts per person.
Yes, ma'am.
So that is about once a week, on average.
Madam Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Wilson.
it's extremely difficult virtual, knowing when people stop. I mean, I'm not trying to interrupt anybody, but Superintendent Hawkins, could you expound upon that comment about a parent problem?
I think if there is not support in the home to at least make sure the student gets out of bed, I'm not sure how the school is supposed to fix that. And I do think there are parents, that is their responsibility to ensure that at least the student's up. We'll reach out to them. We'll try to help them. But I do think there has to be some partnership in this. And so I think the fact that Ms. Porky's doing that on a daily basis with students shows how far we are willing to go. But I do think the parents have to help us some to ensure that if the child needs to be online doing some work, to at least ensure that they are at least getting started.
How is the truancy rules applying here? If a kid doesn't come to school for 3 or 4 days in a row, at some point the Truancy Act.
Ms. Hargis has been working with any individual students.
Are they reported for truancy to you on virtual?
It's not, I don't know if necessarily truancy is.
They are reported for truancy.
The sanctions, though, and the penalties for truancy are completely different, though, now that we're, having the pandemic. So,
for everybody.
while they may be referred, it's really a referral for maybe to see if there's something going on. So is there an issue with, depression, or is there an issue with a mental health issue, or is there an issue with, whatever need the student may have? It just gives them some extra support from our district social workers. But as far as charges, I don't think that's really going on at all. It's more of a, you may need some help, reach out, kind of check in.
Well, at least it's coming to somebody's attention the same way it is as in person.
Correct.
Exactly.
Okay, that's what was my question. If the virtual is, again, coming to the attention of somebody, just like it is. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I have a follow-up question for the superintendent. When you get the final figures tomorrow, can you email those to us? How many virtual students? Like there were 530 this semester at the high school, 215 say they're coming back. Would you mind doing that?
Yeah, once we get everything finalized, I don't know that it will be finished completely tomorrow, but we should have it by the end of the week.
Okay, and you'll give us the exact numbers?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And I think I know the answer to this, but I just want to.
Madam Chairman, you have a motion on the floor.
I was going to say something, Mr. Wilson, and then we'll call.
Okay.
So we're almost a year into this. Unbelievably, it will be a year soon. throw together this Edgenuity, quickly. I wonder if that is the plan for next semester, to continue virtual students on Edgenuity, or if we can try to work to where our own teachers are designing a curriculum more like what an in-person student would get. We have a lot of virtual that are our teachers who we tout, and rightfully so, as the best teachers, if they are working to develop any kinds of curriculums instead of using something like Edgenuity, where they are at least being taught by the teachers in this high school.
It would, I don't know that that's doable, because your content areas would have to match up exactly with how many virtual students you had to be able to offer all the different courses. We have had Edgenuity in place in this district for several years, and we've used it for initial credit for several years. Our plan is to continue to use that platform moving forward for the second semester.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I would like to, before you go,
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to thank you all for the tutoring, for adding that on. I did have a parent reach out and ask, we're really getting behind. I referred them to you and Mr. Asher, and I got the nicest email following up saying, hey, the tutoring has made all the difference. And I know we have weaknesses, and everyone does. But thank you all for what you're doing. And to all of our teachers, thank you. And any time that these things are discussed, it's not meant to be critical. It's meant to advocate. And I hope we all can remember that, and that that's how you hear it. Not as being critical at 8:55 at night. Thank you, sir.
All right.
Ms. Evelyn, I also have heard stories. It's not only at the high school, at middle school, and elementary schools, our staff and teachers have saved some children in virtual by their extra work, by their care, their knowledge of the individual. Not only the high school, but in each and every of our schools, the staff have gone out of their way to help these kids. And, there's been a lot of pressure, a lot of different obligations that our staff have had to make during all of this. And not only our teachers, but our bus drivers, janitors, principals, everybody. And they all should be commended for the extra step they have taken to help those that are entrusted to them. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. All right. Without any further discussion, I'm going to call the vote. The motion was to allow virtual students to return to in-person instruction on November 30. Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Richardson?
Yes.
Ms. Springdale?
No, and I would like to explain my vote.
Sure.
Because I believe that the board attorney has said that we are not permitted to actually do that as a board, and I feel just a little concerned that, we have this, motion, and I just worry a little bit about, overstepping our responsibilities and roles, and so for that reason, but I absolutely do agree that we need to make sure that we are meeting the needs of our virtual academy students as well as our in-person students. And I think the vast majority of what I hear every day from parents, from students, from teachers and administrators is that the virtual academy is an excellent program. I don't deny that there are cases where some students are struggling, and I'm very pleased and proud that our staff go the extra mile and try to come up with solutions and additional services and referrals for help for those students. So thank you very much.
Ms. Bradley?
No, for the reasons I cited earlier.
The chair votes nay. I want to explain my vote as well. I am swayed by what Mr. Chenoweth said, that we do not have this authority. He said this to us a couple of months ago. I would encourage all board members to accept Mr. Chenoweth's opinion, whether it's on a social media policy or psychiatric hospital or whatever it is that we might not agree with. I accept his opinion on this, and therefore I vote no. I do want to commend Ms. Richardson for her passionate plea. It's clear that she's very close to this issue. And while the vast majority, maybe the vast majority of our virtual students are doing well, this doesn't make up for the 10 that aren't. We have to concentrate on them, so I know we'll continue to do that, but my vote is no. All right, so the motion fails 2-3. The next item is something I added. It really should be quick. It's a resolution concerning the advisory committee for new high school. On September 28th, the board authorized the chair to determine that committee, the makeup of it. I did that. I reported the makeup of that committee in October. There seemed to be a little bit of confusion, so I thought just to be crystal clear and that Mr. Chenoweth's recommendation, we're just going to have a resolution memorializing all those things. So here's the resolution that I move that the board accept the following resolution. Whereas at its September 28th, 2020 Board of Education meeting, the board authorized the chairperson to name an advisory committee for the purpose of advising the board on high school construction issues. It's resolved that the advisory committee should consist of the following members: a board representative, superintendent, 2 teachers to be named by the superintendent, a representative from the maintenance department to be named by the superintendent, high school administrator to be named by the superintendent, a high school student to be named by the chairperson of the board, 3 community members to be named by the chairperson of the board, the architect, and a representative from the construction manager. It's also resolved that the board representative will be the chairperson of the committee and report to the board periodically on the progress of the committee. Resolved that the charge of the committee is to advise the board on high school construction issues, such as selection of bidding alternates for the project, finish selections, equipment selections, and other decisions as needed by the architect and construction manager to complete the work. Resolved that the advisory committee will present its recommendations to the board and the board will make the final decision. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Ms. Evelyn, a second by Mr. Wilson. Any discussion?
I did have a couple of things. First, I just wanted to see, have you chosen the community representative?
Yes, I have, and I did not put them in here as it's just kind of, I didn't want to make it specific to names. I've chosen the community representatives. They are Mayor Vandegrift, Mayor Trogget, and Brenda Richards, who was with us before. The high school student to be named, I think I announced that in October, is Piper McCowan. And then the board representative who will also serve as chair for this resolution is Danny Bradley.
Okay, I just had a question. I wasn't sure if you were going to reach out to us and ask for some input on that. I guess I just had kind of hoped that we might see a minority member named to the committee.
Brenda Richards is
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So the second question I have is about the architect and the representative from the construction manager. Would those be non-voting members? And should we clarify that in the resolution?
They are non-voting members. Am I correct? Are they non-voting in the steering committee?
Well, Mr. Chenoweth, can you clarify?
So this is how we want them to be in there.
Well, and it may have something to do with, when we do pay them. So it may be we may not really have much choice on that. So I just want to clarify and check on that.
I believe the intention is for them to be non-voting.
Yeah, we can amend the resolution to make those 2 non-voting.
Okay, thank you. And then the last clarification I had was, I believe committees typically choose their own chair. So can we strike that sentence and just allow the committee to choose their own chairperson?
I would not be in favor of that. I said in October that Ms. Bradley would be the chair. Grant, do I have the ability and the authority to name the chair?
The board, through this resolution, certainly has the ability to designate that a particular member would be the chair.
Okay. All right, any further discussion? All right, all in favor, we'll call the roll. Mr. Wilson. And this is the amended resolution, which will make the architect a non-voting member and the representative from the construction manager a non-voting member. Mr. Wilson. I'm asking for your vote on the resolution.
He's on mute.
Yes.
Ms. Richardson?
Yes.
Ms. Frengate?
I would say nay, and just to explain, the only reason is I feel like the committee should choose its own chair. I feel like it sets a really bad precedent and example that this board would choose the chair like that. I just have never, ever seen that done before. While I've been on the board, I don't believe probably you've ever seen it or done it before, and I'm sure Mr. Wilson has not seen it or done it before. So that's just the only objection I have.
Ms. Bradley?
I vote yes, and I would ask, who chairs the seating?
Some committees that are made up by statute and legislation, they have in legislation someone who's designated to chair things. So that is done sometimes legislatively. But this board has never cherry-picked a candidate to be the chair of a committee and then said, hey, we're going to form a committee, but we've already got our buy-in there who's going to be running this show. We've just never done that. I think we've always been cognizant that we don't want the public to view the committee that way.
I respectfully disagree. I think we did exactly that on the steering committee and named Jimmy Brennan the chair of that committee in a board meeting.
And I would just say that there were attorney general issues with the entire process there with that committee, and it wasn't legal or lawful in many different ways. And so one thing I just want to make sure is that we always do things that are legal and lawful, but also things that are ethical and pass the smell test.
And I will say that the Attorney General, of course, found all of those allegations to be no merit in them. Repeating that they had merit is being non-transparent to our public by repeating false statements.
And to fact check you, the attorney just upheld that about the steering committee, upheld that about that particular committee.
Well, right.
The other thing, he said that were not actually things that they had jurisdiction over, or they couldn't be proven because board members didn't agree that it happened. The incident that they upheld had to do with the placement of people on that particular committee and the removal of people on that particular committee, all of which happened outside of open, legal, lawful meetings.
Okay, I think you're misrepresenting that. I would encourage everybody to read it. The violation was, in fact, the fact that 3 people were talking, one of them being Ms. Frengate. All right, so I vote yes. So the motion passes 4-1. All right, discussion items.
Ms. Elam, or Chair Elam, excuse me. This has nothing to do with my role as a board member. This is just something I want to say. We won't be together again until after Thanksgiving. And I just wanted to say that these times are very uncertain. They're fearful. We don't know one day to the next who may become sick. But I never want us to lose faith that there are good things in life to be thankful for. And I'm hopeful that all of you and those watching the meetings tonight can, when you get together as much as you can with your family and loved ones next Thursday, that you can appreciate everything you have to be thankful for. And we really do have a lot to be thankful for. And that's all I'd like to say.
Thank you. Ms. Bradley, do you have anything?
Just to echo Mr. Wilson's sentiments, I would say that we are all very thankful for all of our staff and all of the work that they've done, and our administrators working 6 and 7 days a week, and our school nurses facing a pandemic for the first time in 100 years, and our bus drivers and our cafeteria workers and everyone who's doing their best to keep all of our children safe. I'm profoundly thankful.
Ms. Frengate.
I would just say happy Thanksgiving to everyone. I hope everyone has a safe and healthy holiday. And that's all.
Ms. Richardson.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I want to make sure I wasn't muted. First, I'd like to address the petition that started to have me removed from the seat that I was elected for. It specifically says that I use hate speech and called anyone who chooses to recognize the challenges of oppression and racism against Black-owned businesses racist as F. That is not true. My post was a call to support all small businesses. and ended with the question of what did I do bringing my kids into this crazy world. I understand the struggles of all small businesses now, and my support for them remains unwavering. My concern doesn't stop with my children. Anyone who looks at my time on this board and researches the way that I've voted can see that my concern has and always has been for all of our kids. I've been outspoken about the multiple sickening situations where staff has taken advantage and had inappropriate sexual relationships with our kids. I've been very clear on my stance that our LGBTQ kids are treated fair and equal, and even questioned why they were denied the same access to bathrooms as all other students. I've been the loudest voice for our kids who have been left behind in virtual learning, even working to help children who are suffering the most, both mentally and physically, get back into in-person learning before the set date of January. To take a post that I made and twist it into something that it isn't is wrong. Anyone who knows me personally knows that there is no limit to the amount of work that I will do for any child. In all of the emails, calls, threats, and hate that has been directed towards me, not one single person has asked what I've done for any of our children. This leads me to believe that my Facebook posts on my personal page are more important to these people than the actual work that I've done. I've considered not making a statement tonight because for some people who want me to be removed from the board, it doesn't matter what I say, it's either going to be too much or it's not going to be enough. My constituents voted me into this seat knowing exactly who I am and what I stand for. Unlike many in a political position, I have not changed who I am just to smooth things over and vote with the crowd to keep the peace. I'm a passionate person. I'm passionate about small businesses. I'm unwavering in that. I'm passionate about pedophiles harming our kids. I'm passionate about every child being treated fair and equal. And I'm passionate about the citizens of Woodford County being able to afford to live here. My passion goes beyond the color of someone's skin, the religion they choose, and the person they choose to love, or how they choose to live their personal life. I'll continue my fight on this board as long as I'm allowed to. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Richardson. All I have to say really, again, is happy Thanksgiving, safe, and I just hope everybody can be with the people they love. We've missed them desperately over the last 9 months, I know, and I hope everybody can be with who they want to be in a safe and healthy manner. All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
Second.
Okay, I had a motion by Ms. Springate, a second by Ms. Bradley. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0. Thank you all. Did you share?
hurt.